Out of the gates and ready to go. Friday edition of OutKick 360 is here. 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine with Chad Withrow. I'm Jonathan Hutton. Armando Salguero joins us. We talk NFL headlines with Armando from OutKick.com. He'll be with us in 20 minutes, plus a full preview of the top games across the NFL. We'll give you some of our underdog picks and much more. We'll look ahead to the bowl games on tap this weekend. Already underway. UAB coming back in the fourth quarter to take care of Miami of Ohio, although great finish in the first game of the Bahamas Bowl, 24-20.
Bowl season's off to a bang of a start. It was a great finish, 2 yards short of winning the game for Miami of Ohio. UAB with the stop on the last play of the game. Exciting.
Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. I just watched Spirited over the weekend,
okay, yeah.
And it's a musical, and there's an entire musical number titled Good Afternoon, and it's about in Dickensian England in the 1840s, if you said good afternoon to someone, it was like saying bleep you to someone.
Really?
It was a cut down. So if you went and said good afternoon, that was a way of, it's almost like bless your heart. If a Southern woman says that to you, it's not a good thing. So every time I hear good afternoon now, Hutton, I feel like you're telling me to bleep off. So I appreciate it. Good afternoon
I'm certainly
to you
not
too.
doing that, yes.
Good afternoon to you too.
You were already around a 7, you said, for your Christmas spirit. Did last night put you at a 10 for the OutKick Christmas party?
It helped. It was very festive with the OutKick Christmas party. What did not help was walking in and Clay Travis looking at me said, "Do you have a mustache? Are you trying to grow a mustache?" And I was like, "I haven't shaved in like 3 days. This is just what happens when I don't shave. I don't know what to tell you. My facial hair, in the words of Joe Dirt, it grows in all white trashy like and doesn't really connect with the goatee to the mustache. So there's a little bit of a separation. So there was facial hair on the side and on the chin and below my nose, above my lip. But it just doesn't connect as well. So Clay thought I was actually intentionally trying to grow a mustache, like my father, Tom, who rocks the mustache as well as Magnum P.I. in the 1980s. I don't rock the mustache well. I don't rock the beard particularly well. I wasn't trying to grow a beard, but it really just threw me off the moment I walked in, and Clay's like, "Is that a mustache? Are you growing a mustache?" And I'm like, "Does anyone here have a razor? Can I go shave right now?" The man who's wearing a red velvet sports coat all night is criticizing me about my fashion and about my look. How dare he? Good afternoon.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to say.
Clay looked the part. Also, the alligator boots were a big hit as well for Clay. Yeah, it was a great time with all the staff.
The night ended with Clay putting his boots up on a table and demanding someone take a picture that the boots were in the picture. So make sure you get the boots. Make sure you get the boots in this picture. I walked away at that point.
The 49ers win over Seattle last night on Thursday Night Football, 21-13 the final, and the 49ers have wrapped up the NFC West. They are the second team now to do it, and they do it behind Brock Purdy, who wins again, and behind solid defense led by Nick Bosa. But here is Brock Purdy now leading the charge for Shanahan's squad that have now won 7 straight games. And in those games, the defense has not allowed more than 17 points in those wins. They are hitting their stride. And so now the big question is for San Francisco, with 3 games to play, and knowing that at worst, you're going to be the 3 seed. At best, you'll be the 2 because no one's catching Philadelphia. And on the flip side of that, out of the NFC South, that team's going to be the 4 no matter who wins it because every team is bad. So do you rest players? Do you start to try to get as healthy as possible now? Or with Purdy at quarterback, do you need to make sure everything is in rhythm with all of your starters as you go into the postseason? I'm torn on this because on one side, it's the war of attrition. We hit this yesterday. And they've also lost 2 quarterbacks already from the starting position. You don't need that to happen again.
No.
And this guy can win.
Josh Johnson's next up if he goes down, if Purdy goes down. This
guy can win for you. I mean, just watching the offense play, they'll get Deebo Samuel back, they hope, by the start of the postseason as well. I don't know if it's worth the risk of actually trying to get things humming as they go to the postseason. They're already there, and this defense is as legit of a group in the NFL as there is across the league.
I think I have a very, very clear opinion on this of what to do, and it is that scared money doesn't win. I think you got to play. You play out the rest of the way. You try to make sure you get that number 2 seed. You still are. They're not locked into a seed. I think it's a little bit different if they're locked in to one seed line or another, but you try to play for that number 2 seed. And Hutton, what you said, Brock Purdy needs the reps. He needs to get more and more in sync with this offense. It's only going to help this guy. His confidence is growing with each game and with each win. This is just his second start. He entered the game 3 weeks ago, played well in the start in the win over Tampa Bay, started this game efficient, not great, but did what he needed to, didn't put the ball in harm's way. I saw where there's 3 quarterbacks in their first 2 starts to have thrown for 70% completion percentage and 4 touchdowns with no picks. Those 3 quarterbacks now are Brock Purdy, Aaron Rodgers, and Jimmy Garoppolo is the third, which was interesting to me.
Yeah.
So, look, Purdy is only going to get better. You got to play him, and it doesn't help him to play him with backups and start resting some of your stars. Christian McCaffrey gets better and better, 32 touches in different ways.
138 yards from scrimmage last night.
So, yeah.
George Kittle.
You got to go. Scared money.
Defenses.
Scared money's not going to win here. I think if you're San Fran, you play for that number 2 seed and you leave your guys in.
And this defense, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 7 passes defended. And Nick Bosa had one of those sacks. Would have had another. There was a pick 6 that would have extended the game 28-3. It was called back on a Bosa hit on Geno Smith, where as he's letting the football go, Bosa's going right at the midsection, right at the rib cage for a hard hit, and ends up landing on him, driving into him, and that was the description from the official. And Bosa said after the game and said today that he felt like it was a good call. Like he was worried that it was going to be flagged based on the fact that he landed on Geno Smith the way he did. That looked like it's just a great hit. But the focus is also on the quarterback being driven into the ground. And you could see that on the other sack where Bosa took the NFL lead with 15.5 now in the season. On the other sack, he made sure that he wasn't going to do the same thing. He was conscious of that. And you could a clean hit, but the way they went to the ground, the official called it.
Yeah, it's
mind-numbing.
But here's what we're teaching with these rules. It's to not really have a tackling technique. Like your job now is to kind of matador the quarterback to the ground somehow without landing any part of your body on top of him. And from the lowest levels of football, it's, get low, square someone up, keep your head up as you hit them, drive through them, make sure they go to and now it's just go and push the guy down. You can't go too low. You don't want to go too high. Push him down the chest or grab part of his jersey, start to sling him. He may stand up. That's, not your fault if he does, but hopefully he falls down. It's just, I don't know what you do if you're Bosa. Just hope your best that you can get him to the ground without really hitting him, right? That's the goal. If you're getting close to the quarterback.
They are in a really tough spot in that mode. Because also, Smith the right tackle, I believe, was driven back the other way, and so he hit the offensive lineman on the way down, like he backed into him almost on the way down on the tackle attempt, which I don't know if it added to it or not, but it's not like you have a lot of room there to work with. But you did see that they gingerly sacked him the rest of the way.
But if you're, Big Ben when he was playing, Josh Allen right now, you're not ever going to get those guys to the ground.
You're right.
You have to, by the letter of the law, and there isn't really no letter of the law because it's also subjective, but by what officials are calling right now, to bring Josh Allen to the ground, you have to rough him up. So it's going to be a 15-yard penalty for roughing the passer because that's the physical force it takes to get a guy like that to the ground is no longer allowed in football, which is
so. This is how the rule reads. I know, and Bosa again, he took the high road and said it was a good call. But here's the quote from the NFL rulebook: "A rushing defender is prohibited from committing such intimidating and punishing acts as quote stuffing a passer into the ground or unnecessarily wrestling or driving him down after the passer has thrown the ball. When tackling a passer who is in a defenseless posture during or just after throwing a pass," is in parentheses. a defensive player must not unnecessarily or violently throw him down and land on top of him with all or most of the defender's weight. Instead, the defensive player must strive to wrap up the passer with the defensive player's arms and not land on the passer. I don't know how, if you're Nick Bosa, you're flying through there on that hit, and you were supposed to, somehow in the moment, like twist off somehow and get where you don't land on him in a closet, basically, that you're trying to work out, a telephone booth, where you also have an offensive tackle that's been driven back the other way and there's no room to go. I don't know how you avoid this.
It's perplexing. Ace in our YouTube chat says, if you're going to go that far in quarterback protection, then as soon as a defender grabs a quarterback or touches them, the ref should blow the whistle dead. The problem with that is then you eliminate Eli Manning to David Tyree.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the most exciting plays in the history of the game in a Super Bowl, where Eli Manning was grabbed, slung around, kept his feet, stumbles back up, and then throws the ball for the helmet catch against the Patriots that ends up beating them in a Super Bowl. And ultimately what the league wants is offense, excitement, money. And what drives that are these great quarterbacks. So they're going to do everything to protect. There's nothing fair about this.
Right.
This is not fair and balanced. This is not something that's intended to be fair for the defense. It is, they're not going to blow the play dead because they want that ability of the quarterback to slip out of a tackle because the guys are having to tackle them so light right now to avoid roughing. That's what ultimately the league wants, is for those type of plays to happen. And it's not fair for the defense.
Brittany Griner posts on Instagram, breaks her silence. First time she's posted anything like this with a statement since she's arrived back to the United States. It feels so good to be home. The last 10 months have been a battle at every turn. I dug deep to keep my faith, and it was the love from so many of you that helped keep me going. From the bottom of my heart, thank you to everyone for your help. She goes on to list a number of people that assisted in making sure that she was back in the U.S., and she also made it a point to mention President Biden and his commitment to bringing home Paul Whelan and others that remain over there without an opportunity to come back. And that's also important in her statement as well.
She also recognized her Russian attorneys, which I didn't even think that she'd be given an attorney in Russia, honestly. The way their system works, I was kind of surprised to see that she had 2 attorneys in Russia that were representing her release to try to get out. So my big takeaway from the statement is that she says she's going to play this upcoming season
for the Mercury.
For the Phoenix Mercury. And my first thought was, not at one point did I ever think about Brittany Griner playing in the WNBA again. I mean, that's how little I care about the WNBA.
Right.
I never thought of it in that respect, right?
Yeah, I didn't.
When I saw that, I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess if she's not injured and she's healthy enough, I guess she could play professional basketball again. But when I saw that part in the statement, I thought, boy, she's saying she's going to come back and play this season. I didn't even give it 1 second's thought. I was hopeful she'd get back and be back in the United States. I never even thought about her coming back and playing in the WNBA.
Same.
Not once.
Same. And she ended by saying, I also want to make one thing very clear. I intend to play basketball for the WNBA's Phoenix Mercury this season, and in doing so, I look forward to being able to say thank you to those of you who advocated, wrote, and posted for me in person soon. And signs it with BG, Brittany Griner, 42. I like the sentiment, though, about Paul Whelan and mentioning the commitment to also getting him back to the States. Armando Salguero is about to join us. He is in Buffalo. He will be covering the Bills and Dolphins, where it is...
Cannot wait to get a weather update from him.
It's beyond cold. And the lake effect snow is scheduled. And Armando's got an interesting take on the quarterback play in this game and who the snow actually benefits. Armando Salguero next on OutKick 360.
Welcome into the Trey Wallace podcast on this somber week as we remember head coach Mike Leach of Mississippi State. Also get into a couple other topics, but I'm Trey Wallace. Happy to be joined by my boy Jake Crane here from Crane and Company. Every single morning you can catch them. Jake, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Trey, man, appreciate you having me. I'm doing well. Obviously, some sad news on the forefront, not only in the college football world, but the sports world in general with the passing of Mike Leach. But it's been a while since me and you've been able to get together, and even though the circumstances are rather grim, I'm always glad to see you.
No, trust me, man. The feelings are mutual, and it's just looking back on yesterday and the last couple of days with Mike Leach and everything that went down. Your first thoughts on Sunday when we all start getting news and we all start hearing about everything that's happened with Coach Leach. The first things that come to your mind when that goes down, Jake.
Well, once kind of the shock wears off a little bit to where you kind of get in a normal headspace again and are able to take kind of a 30,000 view look at it. The memories pop up, obviously, of the funny media moments and the big wins. I mean, you look at the pass to Crabtree in the game versus Texas is an iconic play, and really throughout his career, how integral he was in the air raid, going back all the way with Hal Mummy at Iowa Wesleyan, where they invented it basically and named it. It was kind of his baby, and he was part of that air raid. Spread you out, replace modified runs, replace the run game with the pass game, and pass to run. But the thing I think that I ended up getting the most from the sad news, outside of it not looking good and the shock value wearing off, as I mentioned, was that Coach Leach was something I think that we're losing more of in every day in our society. He was genuinely himself.
Yes,
he had his principles. He had his ideas, and whether you like them or not, he wasn't going to change them. And in a society like we're in today, where everybody goes with the woke mob or what's in or what's not going to get them, in trouble per se, or looked at as a terrible person, it was refreshing almost. So that's what I kept coming back to. That's what we talked about on the show, is just his genuine ability to be himself. And it's sad that that's an anomaly in society today, but it is.
Isn't it crazy to have a coach like Mike Leach who was not afraid to say what was on his mind? It doesn't matter if it was post game. It doesn't matter if it's a midweek conversation. It doesn't, I went back and watched something last night, Jake, and he was talking about student debt and how he would rather spend a month in jail than have to pay off his student debt, and how it hurts society and it hurts the kids and they can't get out of it and whatnot. But he was not the one to ever hold back on anything. And you couldn't, I don't think the ADs at Tech, at State, at Mississippi State, and I was referring to Washington State, I don't think they wanted to hold him back. He was his own type of man, and I think that's what made him special, brother.
Yeah, no, and he's an old school football coach at heart too. If you kind of see the way he goes about things, so it's such a unique blend. You could go across the globe, and I don't think find another person that's super similar to Mike Leach and his personality. But yeah, I mean, let me ask you this: if I drove across the country when Joe Moorhead was the head coach at Mississippi State and asked high school football recruits, "Tell me the head coach at Mississippi State," a lot of them are not going to know that it's Joe Moorhead, but those same kids that wouldn't know, if I would have driven through during his tenure, would have known that Mike Leach was at Mississippi State.
OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network, and we are pleased to be joined by Armando Salguero of OutKick.com, who has made his way to Buffalo.
Snowy Western New York.
Yes, and the lake effect snow is going to happen, and it's going to be great for us watching it. Armando has made it. He's going to be at the game for covering for full coverage of this. Armando, I hope everything went well in getting there, and I hope everything goes well in going home after the game based on the forecast.
No, I'm a little peeved, guys, because so I draw this assignment in Buffalo. Meanwhile, you guys are having Christmas parties and celebrations in Nashville. Somehow that doesn't feel right to me. That's not righteous at all.
Yeah, the weather's slightly better in Nashville. I will say, though, it's going to be like teens and 20s over the weekend, even here in Nashville. But you weren't missed at the holiday party last night, Armando. I'm amazed at the amount of Miami writers that I follow that are just extremely angry that this game has not been moved. They're like, they moved the game to Detroit for less, the conditions weren't going to be this bad, and now they're making this Miami team play in this. And I'm thinking, you got a chance to be a part of something pretty cool watching this game, and you're going to be there. It's at least going to be a sight to behold in this football game.
Yeah, so actually, if that's what they're saying, I mean, I haven't looked. I've been heads down with other stuff today. But if that's what they're saying, they're wrong, because the conditions tomorrow are not going to be as bad as Snowmageddon. I mean, I saw pictures of Snowmageddon, and people were opening their front doors, and there was snow above the door frame. What we're expecting tomorrow is 2 feet of snow, which, unless you're a tiny person, you're gonna be all right. It's gonna be fine.
I enjoyed your piece at OutKick where you compared the two quarterbacks and which quarterback is actually going into this game ready to play in the elements. I was surprised it's Tua and not Josh Allen.
Well, yeah. So Josh Allen, people forget. I mean, he's from California. He's from the Fresno Valley. And I looked it up. His hometown gets an average of 0 snowfall every year. And everybody has this view of Josh Allen being this caveman, Neanderthal caveman in the snow and in the blocks of ice. He's not that. He played in Wyoming. I get that. And obviously he is the favorite son here in Buffalo, but he doesn't like the cold. He was complaining the other day about taking his shoes off after practice, and his feet were, quote, still frozen. So there's that. Now, having said that, he has the arm that is much better equipped for bad conditions and windy conditions compared to Tua. But every quarterback that I've ever covered has always said to me, I don't mind playing in snow. I mind playing in ice. That's bad. And I mind wind. That's bad, because the ball sails or drops, or I can't get my footing right. Those are the things that affect a passing game. By the way, also for receivers, they can't get their footing right.
No doubt. I'm curious from the perception of Tua Tagovailoa now over this recent stretch, and the reality of if he goes and leads the team to victory against Buffalo in these conditions, how that changes the perception, not just outsiders looking in, but the perception of this is the quarterback, we know it, right? Like that is it? It's not 50-50. I think they know that Tua is really good. But if he is able to prove he can take this team and lead them on the road in these conditions, what would that mean for him moving forward?
Well, it would be big. Obviously, I think we get caught up in the moment sometimes, Jonathan. Tua the narrative on Tua this year has gone from we're going to put talent around him and see if what he does with that talent, and if he succeeds, great, and if not, we'll move on after the season, to he actually played well with that talent around him, to, oh my gosh, he's an MVP candidate, to, oh my gosh, he struggled the last 2 weeks. He's not all that anymore. My guess is that it's more about Tua is good, and that's what we're going to see. But to judge him off of one game, when that one game is not a playoff game or not a do or die game, that I think is probably not the best way to approach it.
Let's get into the moment a little bit with Brock Purdy and the 49ers and what's happening there, and not really about anything past this season. But we talked about this in the first segment, Armando, about, they've locked up the division, and now it's the question of the 2 seed or the 3 seed, but the need to get Brock Purdy some more reps and get him playing with these guys even more if he's going to be the guy going forward in the playoffs. What do you see from this 49ers team with Purdy right now, not just this regular season, and I'm not talking about a year or two in the future, but in a possible playoff run with what this offense looks like with him at the helm?
Right. So, look, I like Brock Purdy a lot. I think he has the it thing going on, the it factor,
yes.
chutzpah, moxie, pick your word. He's got it. But, and I see, obviously he wears number 13. He's not Dan Marino.
Yeah.
He's not that guy. He's not Joe Montana. He's not that guy. Okay? Again, we've seen a small sample size with him, and what I assume we'll see going forward, not necessarily in the regular season, defensive coordinators who make a bunch of money, 7 figures a year, they will find the mistakes, the problems, the flaws in his game, and they will expose them. And it will matter. And if the San Francisco 49ers can win games with that great defense, which is the best in the NFL, or, a running game that includes Christian McCaffrey, who is, pretty dynamic, then they will advance. And if they have to rely on Brock Purdy, they won't advance. It's pretty much as simple as that. I'm sorry to be the pumpkin, smasher on Cinderella, but that's just how it's going to play out. I'm sorry.
We said the same thing about Brady in the playoffs in 2001. No, I'm kidding. But it was kind of the same thing, right? Well, this guy's not going to win you anything, but maybe he won't get you beat. And then they won the Super Bowl, and the rest is history. But I'm with you. He's doing a good job of not throwing interceptions and not throwing in harm's way right now, and that's really what they need at this point.
Armando Salguero with us. Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, you mentioned Brady. The Brock Purdy arc right now matches that Brady arc of that year.
Yep.
I'm not saying Brock Purdy is going to be Tom Brady, but
I brought it up for a reason. Yeah.
Right.
No, yeah.
The 2001 Patriots didn't win, because of Tom Brady up until that Super Bowl game where he had the late drive against the Rams. But they won on great defense, great coaching, great discipline, a running game, and the quarterback didn't screw it up.
Armando, we're going to see Zach Wilson start for the New York Jets because Mike White has not been cleared to play by team doctors. Robert Saleh, you could tell, was trying to speak this into existence from the jump, from postgame last week. Where he's like, yeah, he's going to play. And he finished the game. He came back not once but twice a week ago with the rib injury, and he's been practicing based on reports. He's been out there, and they're not going to clear him in time for the game. What's your reaction to that? And I know they're erring on the side of caution here, but we also know that football-wise, the Jets have to be pushing for him to play, and the doctors aren't allowing it.
Well, here's what I is a little disturbing to me, okay? So Mike White takes this vicious hit from Matt Milano last week. Clean hit, but anyone who saw it saw that basically Milano jackknifed, Mike White. It was like his head met his knees, and Milano was in between there at the ribs, and he does have a fractured rib. Mike White said that today. Mike White continued to play in that game. So the doctors cleared him to play in that game. So the doctors who cleared him to play in that game are now not clearing him to play on Sunday, because if he takes a hit that is in exactly the wrong place, it could create bigger problems. Let me think. So a hit in the exact right place could not create bigger problems last Sunday, but this Sunday, it all of a sudden it can. It speaks to, at the very least, the doctors that were on the sideline for the Jets on Sunday, either prematurely cleared him or didn't have enough information to know better, or something went wrong, because Mike White has not gotten worse during this week. He's gotten better, but he was fine to play last Sunday, but not fine to play this Sunday.
It's easy to see where Robert Saleh and probably Mike White would be confused at the very least as to how he got back in and could play, and why he's saying after the game, oh, he's going to be fine, he'll play next week, knowing the situation, then being told by the doctors that he, in fact, is not cleared to play. So I can understand that confusion with everything you just laid out, Armando. Armando Salguero, senior NFL writer for OutKick.com, is our guest. Saturday games, Ravens-Browns. What are the Ravens exactly right now with Tyler Huntley battling an injury also, but looking like he's going to play in this game?
They're a team that, doesn't move the needle. They're a good team with Lamar. Lamar's not going to be there. The Ravens need Lamar. Captain Obvious reporting for duty. But I got to tell you, the more interesting quarterback to me in this game continues to be Deshaun Watson. When does Deshaun Watson report for duty? Because the guy that we've seen playing for the Cleveland Browns the last couple of weeks, and I was at that game where he came back against the Houston Texans, that's not a good quarterback. Joe Montana said it. He's going to be rusty. Montana said he's going to be rusty for a couple of games. This is game 3. It is time, my man, to, kind of step up to that fully guaranteed $230 million contract, because the team can only go so far with playing bad teams and or relying on a defense and the running game of Nick Chubb. He is supposed to be elite. He has been subpar. It is time. I'm sorry, and forgive me if I'm not giving Deshaun Watson a huge break. He's not the kind of, his history, I don't feel like giving him breaks. What can I tell you?
Another quarterback expected to be elite is Trevor Lawrence, and I think it's an important 4-game stretch for him as he comes off this great game against Tennessee. They're back at home. They're hosting Dallas this week, and while we don't know if he's turned a corner yet or not, he can certainly show us he has through this finish. And what we've seen recently is a lot of back and forth. 1 week it's not great, the other week outstanding. What do you think we're seeing right now with Trevor Lawrence, the franchise quarterback in Jacksonville?
Growth, maturity, and a good amount of chip on shoulder. And I love chip on shoulder. You guys saw what he did to the crowd in Tennessee the other day. That is chip on shoulder Trevor Lawrence. And I don't think I've ever seen that. I didn't see it at Clemson. I've obviously never seen it in Jacksonville. But that dude showed an edge to him that I didn't know was there. And what I would say to you is a lot of the great quarterbacks who have been great quarterbacks in the NFL, they have that edge. They have that villain inside of them that they keep sometimes suppressed, sometimes not so suppressed, but they've got that anger thing, that motivation thing. Brady has made a career out of it. Others have done so as well. We saw it in Trevor Lawrence. If he can continue to, manage and manifest that, and at the same time develop under Doug Peterson, we might be here in a year, maybe two, and he's the best quarterback in the NFL.
I want to go back to that Jets matchup against the Lions, Armando, because it's an interesting matchup from the perspective of the current playoff picture. Both teams right now are the 9 seed, 2 spots out of the final wild card selection at 7. But both teams, if you start to look ahead, the Giants and the Seahawks are ahead of the Lions. Meanwhile, the Chargers and the Patriots are ahead of the Jets. The game against these two franchises will go a long way. Now, the circumstances are a bit different in the AFC, NFC, and tiebreakers and all that. But it's an interesting glimpse at this at the 6-7 Detroit Lions, second in the NFC North, and the 7-6 Jets, and an opportunity for Detroit to continue to climb and claw and scratch their way to a 7 seed. It would be very surprising based on the way they started.
Your Lions, Armando. Your Lions.
You guys are going to drag me kicking and screaming.
Come on.
Lions
Let's talk Lions.
and it's interesting because this week I'm with you. And it's interesting because the Jets have a very good defense. Can we agree on that? They are
absolutely
underrated, outstanding. They're very good. They're, with the exception of Quinnen Williams, they are healthy. And it will be a great measure of Jared Goff, who we talked about last week, has developed well in advance under the Lions coaching staff and Dan Campbell, of course, than he did under the Rams coaching staff and Sean McVay, who gave up on him. So this is all right, Jared. Nice, nice season. The Jets have probably the best defense you've faced so far this season. What do you got, brother?
So it looks like Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be a Cowboy, kind of, maybe. This is the quote from Jerry Jones to USA Today. Odell's going to join us. Next sentence. There's a good chance he will join us with the complete goal of getting ready for a playoff game or two, and then I'll look to the future. But most of it being about now. Obviously, adding Odell Beckham Jr. this late in the game is about now and about a possible playoff run. He goes on to reference, we need some Deion Sanders-like moments in the playoffs, and he's a guy capable of giving us that in a playoff run. What do you think of this quote, Armando, but the idea of Odell Beckham Jr., the team we've circled the whole time, being possible with the Cowboys, that possible marriage here late in the season and in the playoffs?
Yeah, so God bless Jerry Jones. I love Jerry Jones.
Me too.
Because he's the only owner in the NFL that talks every week. And a lot of media guys roll their eyes, and I just stand there and applaud because the more, the merrier. What I would say to you about Odell Beckham Jr. is if we're expecting him to be electric, dynamic immediately, didn't we just get done talking about Deshaun Watson? And Deshaun Watson's not coming off of injuries. Odell Beckham Jr. is coming off his second ACL. And to ask him to skip the entire season, because that would be the plan, and then show up for the playoffs and factor, that's a high bar to ask him to jump over, and I'm not sure that it's a fair bar to ask him to jump over.
Yeah, and going back to our conversation last week, I understand the pass game for Dallas has been very inconsistent, but I think adding Odell Beckham Jr. takes away from where the focus should be, which is on the run game. Dallas's run game over the last 6 weeks, they're averaging 171 yards a game on the ground. I mean, that to me is going to lead this team more than it will be on the arm of Dak Prescott.
Moreover, you know who they could use more than Odell Beckham Jr.? Amari Cooper. oh, uh, who they traded to the Cleveland Browns for like a lampshade. And yet, what happened there? You wouldn't need Odell Beckham Jr. if you had Amari Cooper.
Titans and Chargers, I don't see a Titans team that's going on the road this week and winning with how they're playing. I know the Chargers give up a ton of rushing yards per game defensively. The Titans give up a ton of passing yards per game, and one team is throwing the football very well. The other team, known for running it, hasn't been running it very well. I don't see LA losing, and that's big because the Chargers would have picked up back-to-back wins over Miami and Tennessee in the AFC.
Right. So you're absolutely right. It's hard to see the Titans winning that game, but for me, it's easy to see the Chargers losing it. And, Bill Parcells once told me 60 to 70% of the games in the NFL are lost before they're won. And what he meant by that is teams find a way to lose and hand victories to their opponents. And the Chargers are on my top 5 list of teams that hand victories over to the opponents. They are a very talented team that is chronically always injured and chronically always underachieving and chronically always making, boneheaded, weird mistakes that no one understands because their roster is a talented roster and they've got, obviously an outstanding, amazing quarterback. So you're right. The Chargers probably should win this game, but I think Mike Vrabel is a better coach than Brandon Staley. I think that the Titans are I'm saying this, understanding what has happened this year.
Yep.
The Titans are a better organization than the Chargers, and the Chargers don't have a home field advantage. Los Angeles yawns every time the Chargers play. It's crazy over there.
So the Washington Commanders, their last time out, they tied the New York Giants, and they get a bye week, and their very next game is against the New York Giants. This is not what you want to see in a schedule and the schedule makers of the NFL, but this is what we're going to get. And Armando, never in my life have I rooted for a tie, but I'm rooting for a back-to-back ties in this game. Let's make NFL history. I want to see 2 teams play each other back-to-back times, at least for the Commanders. The Giants had a game in between. And let's tie it up again. What do you think about the matchup?
I think the Giants have problems. I think that they've been kind of found out. You can only win so much on discipline and moxie and try hard. Eventually you need talent. And although the Commanders are not supremely talented, they are the more talented team. And so, I would say that the Commanders should probably win this game, but I'd also tell you that what we're going to see in this game is 2 quarterbacks who, if you put truth serum in the leaders of their organizations, their twin organizations, you would understand that neither of these 2 guys are the ones that the organizations want next year as their starting quarterback.
Just to put a bow on the playoff discussion for both of these teams, Washington, 86% chance of making the postseason with a win, 28% chance with a loss. The Giants, 90% chance of making the postseason with a win, 31% chance with a loss. And Seattle, they will be at 57% to make the postseason either way. The result doesn't factor in, according to Football Outsiders. And Detroit, if they continue to go on this path, 20% if the Giants win, 21% if Washington wins. Again, the other 2 teams fighting for that spot, not really affected by the result. The loser, though, in the head-to-head matchup is definitely affected. And with the
feels like an elimination
with
game
another
for the loser
tie,
almost.
with another tie, it probably just stays exactly the same, where Washington still has the advantage. I would assume But, man, what a storyline that would be if they tie again.
Let's get another tie. That's what I'm rooting for. Rooting for a tie. I feel like a soccer fan right now.
No tie
I'm rooting
tomorrow.
for that tie.
No tie tomorrow in the snow game. I need some ground and pound, and I want to see an old-school battle.
Hey, stay warm, Armando. Don't take your cleats off and have frozen feet like Josh Allen. Make sure you wear multiple layers and multiple pairs of socks.
Oh no, it's great. I love Buffalo. I'm gonna go out after I get done with my duties for OutKick and get myself one of the local delicacies, beef on weck.
There you go.
Enjoy. That makes up for the holiday party that you couldn't make last night here.
We didn't have that at the holiday party,
That's right.
so just so you know, beef on weck sounds better.
We're very jealous. Hey, Armando, thank you, man. Enjoy it.
All right, man.
Armando Salguero joins us weekly. I always love having him on.
Beef on weck.
Great job with his coverage as well at OutKick.com. Coming up, straight up, moneyline upsets. We went 2 for 3 this past week. We made some cash. Now we are going 3 for 3. I've got 3 games for you, Chad. That's next on OutKick 360.
Guess who's back, back, back? Drew is back, back, back. Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Drew Brees is back at Purdue. I'll give Drew Brees great credit. The All-Pro Hall of Fame quarterback has always been around Purdue. He has never, ever, ever separated himself for Purdue. You know, you see those guys that are on TV. We're going to introduce the offense now. Dan Duckage, St. Peter and Paul grade school. Shut up! That ain't the point. Drew Brees has given a ton of money to Purdue. Drew Brees has been on the sidelines for Purdue games when he's had a chance. You see on Instagram or on Twitter when Drew was on it. You know what you saw? You saw Drew Brees' kids dressed in Brees Purdue uniforms. Good for Drew Brees coming back to Purdue. And good for Purdue, let's be honest. Hey, the number one thing you can do as a coach right now that's starting a job is make a great first impression. And I got to tell you, between giving the Maccabee kid a scholarship yesterday and Drew Brees back with the program, I got to tell you, that's a hell of a first impression. Graham Harrell is coming to Purdue from West Virginia. Now, I don't know if Graham Harrell is great. At SC, they were in the top 20. They averaged like 30 a game in the Big 12 at West Virginia. But, hey, let's go. When you're Purdue, I don't know. That's a good start for a new coach. That's a great start for a new coach. So good for Drew Brees. But here's the deal, and this is what you got to understand. The best wide receiver at Purdue is a guy named Charlie Jones. Charlie Jones opted out to go to the draft. You know who the quarterback is? Aiden O'Connell. Now, some people refer to him as AOC. I refuse. I will not refer to him as AOC. Are you kidding me? Hey, can we post, if you get a chance, and this is asking a lot, but if we could get that Maccabee scholarship thing from yesterday queued up at some point today and have the Biden deal ready, because I want to see, can anybody understand what Joe Biden is saying? And I like the fact when kids get scholarships, I think it's a great thing. But we're sitting here, listen to this, people. So Drew Brees is back. Purdue lost Jeff Brom. Jeff Brom was a quarterback coach. He was a guy that innovative offense. He had some big wins. He finally got Purdue to the Big Ten title game. Look, all right, he left. He went home. Purdue, the athletic director, and a very good athletic director, Mike Babinski, was ready. Hey, look, he didn't look very far. He went over to Illinois. And he got a coach. And you know what happened? That coach made a hell of a first impression. Let's play the coach at his team meeting giving Devin Maccabee, the star running back, a scholarship.
You know, first, where's Devin at? Yeah, Devin. What's up, man? Stand up, bro. So obviously, like, I played against y'all, right? When I found out he was a walk-on, I'm like, what the hell going on over there? So first order of business, I'm gonna pull rank right now, and you on scholarship, all right, dog? So that, I guess that's what it feels like to flex a little bit as a head coach. You know what I'm saying? So congratulations, man. Couldn't be more happy.
Week 15 is here. OutKick 360 across the OutKick network. It is time for my underdog picks across the NFL. I've got three for you.
Winners,
3 for 4
winners
last
only.
week.
Winners only.
Let's go 3 for 3. And I'll be interested to see, Chad, your thoughts on this. Let's start with the Detroit Lions. Now, at the time I sent this last night, Detroit was a 1-point underdog. Detroit is now a 1-point favorite against the Jets based on the situation with Mike White. So at the time I put this in at outkick.com/bet, I'm taking them as the 1-point underdog to just win outright against New York. Baltimore against the Browns. The Browns are favored by 2.5. Wrong team favored. The Browns are done. They can't run the football. That's how they win games. Meanwhile, Baltimore has some good news with Tyler Huntley clearing concussion protocol. But the real kicker for me is Baltimore's defense is getting the football and handing over extra possessions for its offense. That is crucial in what's going to be a low-scoring game. Give me Baltimore on the road. Plus, Jacksonville might as well here. Ride the hot hand of Trevor Lawrence, guys. The Jags' last 5 games, 111.7 passer rating, completing 71% of his passes, 10 touchdowns, no interceptions on 181 attempts. Trevor Lawrence is starting to get a great feel for what they're doing offensively in Jacksonville, and he's leading. Meanwhile, Dallas, we saw how Houston came close. Jacksonville is much better than Houston. Give me the Jags at home. They're getting 4 points. I think they win outright. I'm betting these individually. You can parlay them if you'd like to. That's how Chad does this. Detroit, Baltimore, Jacksonville.
Parlayed it. $3 bet would win you $21.78 with that parlay. And I need this, Hutton, because that $3 bet put me at $2.51 in my account.
All right.
This is where I would start my comeback right now with these winners. All 3 winners from Hutton come Sunday.
Outkick.com/bet.
Saturday and Sunday, I should say.
You can go through DraftKings there. Davey, what do you think?
Hutton, do you think the Jags will finally be able to break their 20-game losing streak against an NFC team?
They have
That's
been able
an
to break
atrocious
They've
stretch. For
been
the
breaking
Jags.
some streaks. Yes, it's time.
This is sort of the blind squirrel theory, right? I mean,
time.
it's eventually going to have to happen. I mean, they had not won in Nashville against the Titans since 2013.
Right.
Playing there every year. They snapped that streak on Sunday. So why not end another streak? That's definitely the one that I'm most concerned about with your picks. But you've got to go big on at least one of them, so why not?
Taking them at home, and again, not a massive home field advantage. There'll be a ton of Dallas fans there, quite frankly. But I don't know if Dallas is playing their best football. And I do know that Trevor Lawrence right now is playing his best football. So I'm just riding the hot hand. If I lose, I'm still going 2 for 3, but I really feel like we're going 3 for 3 this week. Headlines when we return. Plus, we will take a glance at the 3 games that will kick off across the league on Saturday.
Yeah, I think because things, transitioned from that regime side to that fundamentalist side. So we also had to change some of our tactics and our procedures and everything else and how we did things to cope with these guys, because they were coming up with some ingenious ways of doing things along the line as well, with some of the IEDs, some of the, the booby trapping the houses, things like that, using the cell phones to call to detonate everything. So it became, I think, as much as you say, more violent in that way, because with the regime guys too, we knew that there was the end state was trying to get Saddam. So that we needed intel as well. We needed to gather that intelligence. There was only so much that was there from previous, just historical data. Then we had to actually make it real intel and workable intel. But with the fundamentalists, if you gave them a chance to vote, and we'd say vote based off, okay, does this guy want to is he going to go along with the capture, or is he wanting to fight? And then let's see who wins. They would rather fight than do anything. There was, so many times guys would detonate suicide vests because it's like, well, they're not going to take me, clack themselves off, thinking they're killing, other folks around them. But, they just, I don't know, they just were different folks. And it was like we had to get more violent in a way, because again, we were going after intel and doing things, and our procedures and everything on the battlefield just had to kind of adjust just like they were doing.
That's crazy. I truly cannot imagine. And I was in college. I started college in 2010. So I was in high school when things were getting kind of real bad in the 06, 07 era. And I remember people would always talk about do we really need to be fighting these guys? Are they really that bad? And I'm like, this Zarqawi guy's literally chopping people's heads off, right? And don't think it stops there. Like if this guy could, he'd chop all of our heads off too. Fortunately, they dropped a couple bombs on him, I believe, if I recall correctly. So now I want to get into some comparing and contrasting. What were the big differences between fighting in Iraq versus fighting in Afghanistan? Was it mostly the terrain? Was it the level of the combatant? Like, what were the big takeaways that were different from each other?
I think early on with Afghanistan was, everything was so spread out. Everything was so far in between, and we didn't have many helo assets early in the war, just because of how, basically really having to share them along with the other task force and things like that. And so there was a lot more driving, or you would get flown to an area and then you'd be there for a bit, and then, you're not getting there, you're not getting back to your home base for a while. So you're trying to make do of it and literally just sometimes sitting around doing nothing. But then within Iraq, you had more cities, bigger cities, everything else that we were hitting. Granted, you had Kandahar, you had Kabul, but everything really wasn't happening in those locations. It was farther out because, where the terrorists had their training camps from, years before us ever getting there. But then within Iraq, they could hide right there in the cities. There were, so much, just open roads, everything around. And everything else, at a lot more built up areas, and it was an easier road system to get around. So it made it easier for them as well to move around. The terrain, definitely changed throughout, Iraq. You had your river valleys in a way, and you had the humidity, you had palm groves, everything else. And then you had your rocky mountain areas, dry areas. But then Afghanistan was just so severe with the mountains. I mean, that that's some treacherous terrain in itself.
Hour number 2, OutKick 360, Friday edition. Happy Friday to you. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Glad you're with us here at the OutKick studios across the OutKick Network. 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Got some headlines to hit. We have NFL Saturday games. 3 of them we'll preview for you in a moment. We'll get to the Sunday games, the key games across the league. Plus, coming up in hour number 3, we discussed some of the college bowl games. And the Tampa Bay Rays have signed a pitcher who is legally blind. Crazy. We will discuss that story and more. Chad, Micah Parsons, the Dallas Cowboys are playing this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But on Christmas Eve, there is a showdown where Dallas will host Philadelphia. And Dallas is already talking about Philly. And while I don't think Dallas is catching them, and it would take a complete fall from the top of the mountain from Philly because they clinched their playoff spot. Chad, here is Micah Parsons. He's got he was on the Von Miller's podcast, and they were discussing Jalen Hurts and just MVP. And his response to Von Miller in the quote was, "Is it Hurts or the team? It's system and team," talking about the Philadelphia Eagles and Hurts' great season and the competition he's in right now for MVP with Patrick Mahomes. And it's interesting that he's saying that because I absolutely know what he's doing. He's getting in the mind of Hurts, which is tough to do this year. And Hurts was already asked about what Micah Parsons was saying. And I'm going to worry about the Chicago Bears this week. Don't worry about me. You know, that's kind of the mantra of what's going on with the Eagles right now in that locker room. But what do you think? Are you Team Parsons here, thinking Hurts is the system quarterback right now, and it's not about him, it's about the team itself and the structure itself?
Let me start by saying I love how honest Micah Parsons is.
About everything.
About literally everything.
Yeah.
And I love when he came back and was asked about it, he said, what are we talking about here? It's football. He's like, we speak our mind. I'm just speaking my mind. It's not hateful. I'm telling you what I think about a player. I'm going to say what I think. I love that mindset and love Micah Parsons. He's a terrific player also. I mean, it is both. But can't you say that about anyone that's ever been successful at anything? I mean, Jalen Hurts is having an MVP year.
Yeah.
It doesn't change any of that. And also what Micah Parsons is saying is true. This is not necessarily the old Mike Leach approach of, well, it's a Mike Leach, quote, system quarterback. And that would drive Mike Leach crazy to hear that about his guys, that it would be a criticism or a knock that they were a quote-unquote system quarterback. I don't look at Jalen Hurts and say he's a system quarterback. I do look at Jalen Hurts and say he's in the perfect system with the perfect offense for his skill set right now in Philly. And that's no knock at Hurts. And the way Parsons says it and what he's saying, I don't think it's that much of a knock either, because it is more about the entire offense and the system, but that system and offense doesn't look near as good without Jalen Hurts running it.
Right.
So it doesn't change the fact he's a really good player having an MVP season.
And you've got Hurts, who's thrown for 3,100-plus yards, 32 total touchdowns. I believe 22 of those are passing. He's only thrown 3 picks. And to me, that's the separation between him and Mahomes right now. It's very similar to last year. Last year, the MVP vote went to Aaron Rodgers, but it was Brady who had more stats. He led the league in passing yards. But Rodgers he was up top with the touchdown passes to interception ratio.
Yeah.
He wasn't turning the football over. And that to me is the separation between the two players right now when they put the ball in the air. Mahomes has turned it over a bit more, and it's nothing really that he's done wrong. He's been sensational yet again. He's had an MVP season, but I just think Jalen Hurts right now is on top, and it's because right now he's playing better than Patrick Mahomes, believe it or not. It's just very consistent. He's leading the best team in football in a prove-it year. How can you not point to him as the MVP of the league currently? And, I do think it helps Mahomes' case that Tyreek Hill is in Miami, and he's still putting up the top numbers. But Are you with me? I think right now.
Yeah, no, I'm
it
totally
hurts,
with you.
And it's going to be. I think it's difficult.
I think it's a nice little fall off, honestly, from Hurts to Mahomes.
Yeah.
And everyone else. I think he's separated a bit.
That race will either tighten or it's over Christmas Eve, right?
Yeah.
Based on what he does. Again, all the millions of viewers that they will get just by putting Dallas on, and with the magnitude of this game and the holiday, that's where every voter is going to be watching. They already are, but that's where they make up their mind.
It's a little bit reminiscent of Heisman voting, where it feels like everyone really tunes in for championship weekend.
Yeah.
And that's going to say a lot, or that last week of the season.
It's a final stamp.
I do think that it's because the way the seasons are shaping up with the Eagles with the one loss, Cowboys are 10-3 currently. That is a heavyweight bout on Christmas Eve between two rivals within the division. It is going to go a long way to either cementing the MVP or allowing Patrick Mahomes right back in there to be neck and neck.
Chad, Alabama, Kansas State doesn't feel like a heavyweight bout in the Sugar Bowl. However, the top players that would make it that for Bama, they're playing. Bryce Young and Will Anderson, according to Pete Thamel, they're going to play in the Sugar Bowl. Love it.
Good for them.
Love it. Two top 5 picks are going to play in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, you had asked me if Hendon Hooker wasn't hurt, would he play in the Orange Bowl? And my answer was I think that he would, just because of the quarterback position. But, Bryce Young, Hendon Hooker's not a top 10 pick like Bryce Young is. So I think it's terrific. And it's really a great show of leadership that he's doing that. And this is don't take this as a knock if Will Levis decides not to play in the Music City Bowl.
Right.
But I will say that it should be a plus. If you're a scout and you see Bryce Young playing this game, it's a plus if you see Will Anderson playing in a Sugar Bowl. Not even a playoff game, but is going to go in and play. It's not out of line to say, well, I'm going to give them points for doing that, because that shows a commitment not only to their team, but also a pure love of playing the game and wanting to play in big moments when people are watching. That, to me, seems like something that you should really like if you're looking for NFL players. So I'm all for it. And I think if I'm a scout, that would help me in my evaluation with them. Now, the risk, obviously, is you don't want to go out and get hurt. And that's why people are opting out. So,
And we know from the Tennessee perspective, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, they're not playing in the Orange Bowl. And we also learned Darnell Wright is turning pro as well.
But he's going to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's turning pro, but will play in the game.
That's great. And he's getting, yes, I think he's making the right call.
Yeah,
you get that extra year, you get a chance to develop, chance to shine a year early and get that second contract early. Most of the time the offensive linemen are getting those, right? You're sticking around. So, yeah, I think he's making the right call. And the transfer portal now opens up again for another position for Tennessee.
Yeah, and I just, look, I want to go out of my way to give credit where credit is due to guys that want to play in these games and go and play with their teammates. So I think a lot more highly. Not that I thought any bad of them before, but both Will Anderson and Bryce Young for doing this. And I think for Jalen Hyatt specifically, just looking at his situation, if he's going to be a late first-round pick, I understand the decision to not play in this game. The timing of it's all odd with signing an NIL deal with Hyatt Hotels, and part of that is giving a brochure or coupon to parents to go to this game and then not playing in the game. One knock on Jalen Hyatt, you could come in and say, and this is what McShay and others will say, it's kind of a one-hit wonder. It was a hell of a hit. He's the Blitnikoff winner for one season, but I am going to ask around about why didn't you ever take off before this? And what was it about you've admitted to dogging it the year before, that you weren't in. Why? Why did you stay and not transfer if that's the case, if you didn't jive with the coaching staff? How were you dogging it? These are questions I would have to ask.
Sure.
And then, hey, you had this skyrocket of a season, and then you opted out of a bowl game. Why?
I think.
These are just questions that I would have if I were a NFL GM interviewing someone.
On the flip side, the one-hit wonder is fair, but also for Hyatt, how do you view the quarterback position next year at Tennessee compared to what you had during that one-hit wonder season where you took off? And if you don't buy into Milton or whoever it is, now's the time to jump in if you don't think the numbers are going to match up the same way.
Yeah, I'm not saying he made the wrong decision. I understand the decision he made to go pro, because if he comes back, the best case is you stay healthy and you just put up a lot of numbers again in this offense. I don't know that he's going to greatly improve his stock by coming back next year. So this may be the ceiling of where he's going to go, late first round, early second round. That's great. That's a great ceiling. That may be it. I'm simply saying, with Bryce Young, there are no questions I have as a GM when you make the decision to go and play in the bowl game and you fight through the things he fought through this year, and you single-handedly will your teams at times to win a game or be right there in a game where they haven't been great at other spots. Same goes for Will Anderson playing this game. These are just questions I would have for those that opt out. And every situation's different, and I'm not saying these are the wrong decisions for these players, but it's something I would have, and I give a big pat on the back for the Alabama guys that are playing.
Let's take a look at the Week 15 Saturday slate. We've got 3 games kicking off tomorrow across the NFL. And we start with the Colts and the Vikings. The Vikings need to get back on track. We hit this yesterday, Chad. This is one of those games for Minnesota. This should be a get-right game. With the Colts visiting, they're done. They've tapped out. But yet, this is also a team that seems like they're still playing hard for their interim head coach, for whatever that's worth. Vikings only favored by 3.5 at home against an Indianapolis team that's going to want to run the football. And this is a Vikings group, Chad, that needs to get back on track. Even though they've wrapped up the division, they need to be peaking. They need to be playing their best football going into January. And right now, they're sliding back, even though they've got the division wrapped up and everything's great.
Look, it's not. You lose a game in the NFL, it's no big deal, no big story there. And they lost last week to Detroit, and Detroit's playing really well. You lose at home to the Colts, it's a story. You've got a disturbing trend happening now. This is not just some blip on the radar, something you can write off as, hey, no big deal. They got good players too. They're only a 3.5-point favorite at home, which surprised me. It surprised us a week ago when the Lions were favored against them, right?
Yes.
What does Vegas know about this Vikings team? This seems like a game to me that could be a 6-7 point line going into it at home for them, but only 3.5 against the Colts. So that surprised me a bit, but I agree with you. If you're a team that wants momentum going into the playoffs with this great season the Vikings have had, you absolutely must take care of business against a reeling Colts team right now at home.
And they were off to the races in the NFC North to begin with. The Vikings were. They're not the Titans, but the Titans need another win to wrap things up. The Vikings can clinch with a win tomorrow at home.
And what's at stake here? If you lose, if you're the Vikings, you just gave Jeff Saturday his lone win over a playoff team. His one win's over the Raiders right now.
Yeah. By the way, the spread, while a bit surprising based on the opponent, Vegas knows that when Minnesota wins, it's a one-score game. They are 9-0 this season in one-score games. So it's always going to be a close, tight scoreboard in the fourth, and this is a game that Minnesota should be able to put away. Ravens on the road against the Cleveland Browns. Baltimore, they'll have Huntley. They've got to get Lamar Jackson back healthy, but the good news is Huntley has been cleared through concussion protocol. The Ravens' defense, they intercepted Mitch Trubisky 3 times last week, 23 takeaways, second most in the league. They're also second in turnover differential. They're +9 in the NFL. The Browns going the opposite direction, not showing momentum, trying to show just a sign of life with a quarterback now that they have tabbed as their franchise, not playing well through 2 weeks. You would expect things to begin to click in, but they haven't yet, and due in large part because they can't run it. They were held to, Chubb was held to like 37 yards last week. So, yeah, this is a Ravens team that's not favored in this game. The Ravens should go on the road based on where they are right now, based on the fact that they continue to win. I don't care if it's 10-9 or whatever the final score is. Yeah. They're staying ahead of Cincinnati by doing so. Cincinnati has Tampa this week. Baltimore needs to win this to wrap up the division and make sure that they stay ahead of Cincinnati so they can host some games in Baltimore.
Deshaun Watson played better a week ago than he did in Houston in his debut with the Browns, and that's more of a statement of just how bad he was in Houston because he wasn't very good even in the second game, but it was still better than the first one. Armando Salguero said it's time for Deshaun Watson to start to step up, and he said, I'm not giving him any benefit of the doubt, not someone I'm going to wait around and apologize for. And I'm with Armando on that. Look, the Browns made a controversial decision to give a guaranteed contract and all of this money to a guy that was accused of some bad things by a lot of people. So when you do that, that's fine. If you want to be all about the money and the money here being wins and the business, I'm totally fine with that decision. Then go out and win and produce. So if you're going to pay and give the guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson, pressure's on Deshaun Watson now. And then now someone's going to respond, well, hey, no pressure when you got guaranteed money coming in. Well, this is part of the issue with the guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson. That's true also. But Deshaun Watson's not going to get any benefits of the doubt moving forward with his play because the expectation is he needs to be great for this Browns team, and it needs to start soon. If he continues on this path the last few weeks of the season, a lot of pressure going into next year for Deshaun Watson, at least from the outside, looking in at that, because he needs to be a lot better than he's been.
Snowstorm is hitting Orchard Park in the Buffalo area, upper New York, with more lake effect snow scheduled for tomorrow night. Bills hosting the Miami Dolphins. Miami, 3 of their last 4 games to end the regular season are against divisional opponents. Starting with this short week with the trip to Buffalo, they're coming off of their losses to the 49ers and the Chargers. And in those games, they ran 63 fewer plays than their opponent. When you consider the offense and Tua and Hill and how they spin the football, it doesn't bode well for these elements. But as Armando pointed out with us earlier, it's not like Josh Allen enjoys playing in this weather either, and it's not like Buffalo runs it very well unless it's Josh Allen. They're doing better at that, but not to the same consistency as some of the top rushing offenses or more balanced offenses in the league. Miami's got to try to run the football too, and that's part of the issue with how they've scored just 17 points against the Chargers and that defense that was ranked 28th in the NFL. This is a team and offense that's built better than that. But the conditions here, possessions will be at a premium. And from a Buffalo standpoint, Chad, this is also a defense that has allowed 22 points in back-to-back division wins over the Patriots and the Jets.
What would your level of surprise be if the Bills lost this game and the Dolphins went up there and won?
You know,
as a touchdown underdog in the snow.
Yeah.
I'd be pretty surprised.
Yes. I mean, they were practicing this week in 80-degree weather. I mean, that is a drastic change in temperature. I'll also say, though, Buffalo has, I mean, they've already lost. You've seen Miami take advantage of some really good teams. I mean, the teams they've lost to have been among the best teams record-wise in the NFL. They can go toe-to-toe with Buffalo, but I don't think the elements allow that, right? The elements of what we saw in Miami earlier this year compared to what they'll see here, I don't know if this is ideal for Miami, and I think Vegas has it right here. It could be 10-0. I mean, it could be 10-3.
Yeah.
Who knows based on 2 feet of snow. The good news is, Chad, they're not moving this game.
No, and it's a must-watch in large part for that reason. I like this Saturday triple header of NFL games now that college is over.
Yep.
Not over, but bowl games are going on. You don't have a full slate of games. I love getting these 3 games in a row on a Saturday, and that Saturday night game with the snow is must-watch TV.
Coming up, we'll preview the key NFL matchups on Sunday, and we'll give you the 4 other teams. Of course, the 49ers became the second team to not just clinch the division, but they're in the playoffs. And there are 4 other teams that can clinch a playoff spot and make sure that they're playing in January. We'll preview those games as well. That's all straight ahead on OutKick 360.
Welcome into the Trey Wallace podcast on this somber week as we remember head coach Mike Leach of Mississippi State. Also get into a couple other topics, but I'm Trey Wallace. Happy to be joined by my boy Jake Crane here from Crane and Company. Every single morning you can catch them. Jake, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Trey, man, appreciate you having me. I'm doing well. Obviously, some sad news on the forefront, not only in the college football world, but the sports world in general with the passing of Mike Leach. But it's been a while since me and you've been able to get together. And even though the circumstances are rather grim, I'm always glad to see you.
No, trust me, man. The feelings are mutual. And it's just looking back on yesterday and the last couple of days with Mike Leach and everything that went down, your first thoughts on Sunday when we all start getting news and we all start hearing about everything that's happened with Coach Leach, the first things that come to your mind when that goes down, Jake?
Well, once kind of the shock wears off a little bit to where you kind of get in a normal headspace again and are able to take kind of a 30,000 view look at it. The memories pop up obviously of the funny media moments and the big wins. I mean, you look at the pass to Crabtree in the game versus Texas is an iconic play, and really throughout his career, how integral he was in the air raid, going back all the way with Hal Mummy at Iowa Wesleyan, where they invented it basically and named it. It was kind of his baby, and he was part of that air raid. Spread you out, replace modified runs, replace the run game with the pass game, and pass to run. But the thing I think that I ended up getting the most from the sad news, outside of it not looking good and the shock value wearing off, as I mentioned, was that Coach Leach was something I think that we're losing more of in every day in our society. He was genuinely himself.
Yes,
he had his principles. He had his ideas, and whether you like them or not, he wasn't going to change them. And in a society like we're in today, where everybody goes with the woke mob or what's in or what's not going to get them, in trouble per se, or looked at as a terrible person, it was refreshing almost. So that's what I kept coming back to. That's what we talked about on the show, is just his genuine ability to be himself. And it's sad that that's an anomaly in society today, but it is.
Isn't it crazy to have a coach like Mike Leach who was not afraid to say what was on his mind? It doesn't matter if it was post game. It doesn't matter if it's a midweek conversation. It doesn't, I went back and watched something last night, Jake, and he was talking about student debt and how he would rather spend a month in jail than have to pay off his student debt, and how it hurts society and it hurts the kids and they can't get out of it and whatnot. But he was not the one to ever hold back on anything. And you couldn't, I don't think the ADs at Tech, at State, at Mississippi State, and I was referring to Washington State, I don't think they wanted to hold him back. He was his own type of man, and I think that's what made him special, brother.
Yeah, no, and that he's an old school football coach at heart too. If you kind of see the way he goes about things, so it's such a unique blend. You could go across the globe, and I don't think find another person that's super similar to Mike Leach and his personality. But yeah, I mean, let me ask you this: if I drove across the country when Joe Moorhead was the head coach at Mississippi State and asked high school football recruits, tell me the head coach at Mississippi State, a lot of them are not going to know that it's Joe Moorhead, but those same kids that wouldn't know, if I would have driven through during his tenure, would have known that Mike Leach was at Mississippi State.
About to take a look at the key NFL matchups for the Sunday slate. OutKick 360 rolls on. One of the matchups will not include the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson out with a concussion. And there are some details coming out on Wilson.
Yeah, this is from James Palmer, who covers the Broncos in Denver. Russell Wilson, this is a quote from Nathaniel Hackett with media availability. Russell Wilson has passed the concussion protocol. With that being said, as an organization, we decided to give him another week to get ready. So he's ready to go for the Los Angeles Rams. Russ is one of our ultimate competitors in this game. He's unbelievable. We informed him of the decision, and he's not happy with it. He wants to be out there and playing. He's very, very competitive, as we all know, and wants to compete for this team and be out there. But we as an organization, after discussing and talking throughout the entire week, have decided it's best for the organization for him not to play. It's best for Russell. We talked about this from top all the way down to the bottom. So we looked at every single thing and just wanted to give him another week to get ready. We're very confident in Rip. We're excited about Rip and the opportunity to go against the Arizona Cardinals. So this is a business decision by the Broncos to say, yeah, you're not going to play this week. It sounds like a mix of health concerns. We know you passed the protocol, but we're not going to do it, and also business decision.
Well, it sounds similar to what the Miami Dolphins did with Tua.
Yeah.
After the second concussion.
And that was after, but the difference is there was no controversy involved with this one.
Well,
they did that after controversy with his second concussion.
Yeah, but I mean, he was knocked out cold, much like Tua.
Yeah.
And they're not going to play him 7 days later, is what they're saying, based on what happened with Tua playing the following Thursday on a short week, and that happening.
And Hackett is saying he will be back for the Arizona Cardinals game, the following game.
Yes.
Sorry, the Los Angeles Rams. He's not going to play against the Cardinals this week. He will play against the Rams the following week.
Chad, the playoff scenarios right now for clinching a playoff berth this week, the Cowboys can clinch a playoff berth with a win over the Jaguars, or a Commanders loss, or a Lions loss or tie to the Jets. So that's likely happening
A lot of things
this week.
that could go their way.
The Vikings can clinch with a win over the Colts plus a Lions loss to the Jets. So the Lions losing helps both Dallas and Minnesota lock things up. They also can lock things up by just winning as well. Vikings need both. Bills can clinch with just a win over the Dolphins, and the Chiefs clinch with a win over the Texans or a Chargers loss to the Titans. No one's clinching the NFC South just yet. Every team, playoff hopes are alive, and that's why we start with Falcons and Saints. One of these two teams will continue to stay in the mix with 3 weeks to play, believe it or not, with their records. And Atlanta comes in at 5-8. New Orleans 4-9. The Falcons, second in the league in rushing yards. They average just under 160 rushing yards per game. The problem is they have not been doing that lately, and Cordell Patterson has not been himself since he's come back. He put on a show against the Saints in Week 1 when that game was in Atlanta. So that's number one. Of course, Desmond Ridder also playing in this game, getting his first start. I think that should help guys like Drake London and Kyle Pitts become more of a factor in the passing game, where Mariota wasn't throwing it much at all. Ridder, they may not turn it loose with him, but they should dial up a lot more downfield offense against New Orleans. By the way, the Saints, Chris Olave, 35 catches in the last 7 games. He's on pace for 1,100 yards in his rookie season. And the Saints have given up 97 points combined in 6 games, but they've only won 2 of those 6 games because their offense hasn't been putting up anything.
I was going to ask if there's any reason to watch this game from a Saints perspective, and I think the answer is mostly no. Desmond Ridder is the reason to watch for the Falcons at the end of a very weird week for the Falcons, with all the Marcus Mariota back and forth about what's really going on with him, where Arthur Smith made it sound like he kind of quit the team when he got benched, where Desmond Ridder was coming in. But now that may not be the case, and he might actually have surgery happening. Strange situation in Atlanta, but this is now the start of the sneak peek at Desmond Ridder to see if he can be the guy moving forward.
Yep, and a chance here to both teams getting buys. They're coming off that. They've got it healthy as they're going to be right now. And again, both teams, believe it or not, they're in the mix to win the NFC South based on what happens with Tampa Bay and with Carolina, who's right behind Tampa.
The assumption would just be they're both out of the playoff picture, but they are not.
Yeah. Lions and Jets. So Mike White not cleared to play by the team doctors for the Jets. So we will see Zach Wilson starting against the Detroit Lions. That has moved the line to where the Lions are now the road favorite at outkick.com/bet. Detroit squarely in the mix for a wild card berth. The Jets, same situation in the AFC. Both of them are in the 9 spot, 2 spots out of the final wild card spot, and both of these teams extremely capable of beating the other. You've got Jared Goff and this offense that's putting up a ton of numbers. And Chad, they're playing very good football right now. So is the Jets defense. This is a legitimate defense in New York, and I'm excited to see this matchup regardless of who's playing quarterback for the Jets.
So there's a story up at OutKick right now, and this is the tweet from Joe Kinsey that says Elizabeth Hurley, 57 years old, has a new Christmas movie out that you might want to dial up later tonight. Christmas in the Caribbean is described by one critic as, quote, oddly watchable. I read that tweet because now I want to watch this movie, obviously, but because I also think Lions Jets Hutton is very oddly watchable right now. This is maybe outside of the snow game Saturday night, the game I'm most excited to watch this weekend between these two teams battling for that last playoff spot on either side, NFC, AFC. I'm very excited. Oddly watchable, much like Christmas in the Caribbean.
How does Detroit defend Garrett Wilson? Garrett Wilson right now is the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year based on his dynamic play. And he's putting up tons of numbers. He's been tremendous. And Zach Wilson, what has this time off done where they were going to elevate him to the second string? He was going to be active and be the backup to Mike White, not Joe Flacco. So they were ready to put him in this week if needed. Now he's getting the start.
And if he plays well, Robert Saleh's just going to roll with whoever's winning or playing decent.
Yes.
I don't think this is a situation where, when Mike White's healthy, he's going to have the job. He's only getting the job back if Wilson goes out there and is not good, like he was earlier this year. If he's okay, then it's still going to be Wilson's job, even when White comes back from the rib injury.
Corey Davis, by the way, remains in concussion protocol. He has not practiced this week. Bengals and Buccaneers in Tampa, the 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on Sunday. Bengals 3.5-point road favorites against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, who return home after being throttled 35-7 in San Francisco to face a Bengals team that is playing some really good football, and they're healthy. This is a solid Bengals offense against a Tampa Bay offense that can't put up many points right now with how they're distributing the football. Their wide receivers have not been on the same page with Brady for the majority of this season, and they've really struggled to run the football. This is, though, one of those you can 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They did that last week, Tampa did. Another loss, and you're about to see Carolina and the winner of the Atlanta-New Orleans game creep up and take that division, believe it or not.
That Bucs schedule seemingly never lightens up unless they're playing in division, in that terrible division. It's crazy. I mean, going from on the road in San Francisco and getting beat down to then coming home and facing, and you said it, a very hot Cincinnati team. This is a tough schedule for Tampa, and I do not like their chances in this game the way Cincy's playing.
Tampa, after engineering the fourth quarter comeback win over the Saints, which was fun, Brady had one of his worst games back in his home of where he's from in San Francisco. He averaged just a little over 4 yards per attempt. I am intrigued to see how he responds back home with some playoffs and opportunities on the line. Moving through the rest of the games for Sunday, we have on here as well Titans-Chargers. It's big for Los Angeles. Would be a massive win for the Tennessee Titans as well, who have lost 3 straight. They're going in the opposite direction now, 7-6. The Chargers need to keep winning, especially the AFC matchups for tiebreaker purposes if it comes down to that for the 7th spot. Right now, they're the first team out. They could be in the postseason based on some other results with a win at home against a Titans team that they're only favored against by 3. I think you can easily tack on some more points to that because I get it. This is not a good Chargers defense. They're 27th or 28th in the league. You can run the football on them. But the Titans haven't been able to run the football on anyone recently. That's their identity, and they don't have it. They can't point to it. And until I see it again with that offensive line, I mean, they're talking about playing Dylan Radins in this game. Finally.
Should have happened a while
I say finally.
ago.
I mean, yes, but
you got to try something different.
Dylan Radins is now looked to as one of the selling points for why the run game is going to get better. I'm not buying it until I see that because the offensive line is the issue. Give me the Chargers, and this is a big game for LA. If they lose this game, Armando said, I don't see the Titans winning. I could see the Chargers lose because they've been very up and down. But Herbert has a healthy receiving core now, Chad. Eckler has certainly been fantastic. It's hard for me to see a Chargers team that doesn't put up 24 to 28 points, and we know the Titans aren't reaching that.
It's time for the Titans to inspire some confidence and belief, and I'm not talking about with their fan base, with themselves, because I'm watching this team, and it's one that's losing belief by the game and by the quarter. I don't think that they're buying into their own mantras around that building right now, and it was precipitated by the firing of John Robinson. I think there's a lot of looking around, a lot of finger pointing, and not a lot of answers, quite frankly, especially when the stronghold of your team, the rock, was that defense, and that defense can't do anything against the pass right now. And now they're playing Justin Herbert. This is a chance to inspire some confidence from within with a good performance and a win against a Chargers team that's good and talented, but not great. And it's not like you're going into a hostile environment. But I look at the way the Chargers are playing, Hutton, and think, there's no way. There's no way the Titans are going in there the way they're playing.
I don't see it.
And the way the Chargers, I just do not see it. Chargers coming off that win over Miami, I think Justin Herbert's going to do whatever he wants in this game.
Chargers have 7 players listed on their injury report this week. None of those have been ruled out for Sunday's game. 3 players are questionable, and 3 of their 4 injuries with an injury status are on defense. Mike Williams, I'm bringing this up, Mike Williams, the receiver, had an ankle issue, full participation all week. Meanwhile, for the Titans, C.J. Board, Traylon Burks, Christian Fulton, Dontrell Hilliard, Danico Autry, Trey Avery, and Amani Hooker all ruled out for this trip. They're not even making the trip because they're so banged up at some key spots. Ryan Tannehill, by the way, was on the injury report this week with an ankle issue. Maybe a toe, I think, as well, on the opposite foot. So, and we knew the ankle, but I'm saying the toe on the opposite foot. He said, well, might as well even things up a bit.
Yeah,
so
ankles and toes.
The
not
mobility
good.
looks...
Not good things to have injured.
It looks like he's getting better with his mobility, but it's still not where you want him taking off and running 7-8 times in this game. Finally, Giants and Commanders in what has been set up as a likely win and you're a wild card team scenario. Not guaranteed, but it's highly likely the winner of this team.
You had the percentages. One goes to 81, 173, I think,
yes,
in terms of percentage.
Chances to win, yes. And the Commanders all but lock up a wild card berth by beating the Giants at home after tying them 2 weeks ago. Washington's coming off the bye. Meanwhile, the Giants are limping into this game record-wise, Chad, and it's difficult for me to see the Giants winning this game. I'm taking Washington. I'm also intrigued what happens if they tie again for the second time in 3 weeks.
I would love to see another tie. Let's make some history with that tie. But I believe the Commanders are going to get it done in this game at home. That was such a weird scene watching the end of the game up in Jersey between the Giants and the Commanders when it went into tie zone there late in the game with the fan reaction to it. But big opportunity for the Commanders, and Taylor Heineke, for a second time in his career, has sort of transformed himself into the guy for Washington, and it's working so far.
Yeah, he's fun to watch. I mean, the Commanders are 6-1-1 since they
that
lost
defense is really fun
4
to watch
of their first 5 games.
The Commanders, the defensive front,
really turned things around. And even better, Chase Young's getting back on their defense now. And, he's back. He's helped that defense has held opponents to 16 points per game over their last 8 games. And this is a Giants team that has only scored, I've got the number right here as I scroll down. They've scored a total of 78 points in the last 4 games. They're 0-3-1 in those games. They're going the opposite. But it's not due to poor quarterback play. Daniel Jones, he hasn't thrown an interception in 9 of the last 10 games he's played. And he's completing roughly 67% of his passes. And that was a big knock on him, is if you're going to let it loose, turn it loose, is he going to be a turnover machine? Because that's what he was when they were throwing at a high rate. And look, they may not have a great passing game. They don't have great depth at the receiver position. But it's not like Daniel Jones is turning it over, and that's why they're 0-3-1 their last 4. I think it's a close fourth quarter game. I think Washington puts it away, though, with how they're built. And hats off to Ron Rivera.
Yeah.
What an outstanding season, considering the circumstances of everything off the field. And then the circumstances of Wentz not panning out. You go to Heineke. Your starting running back at rookie, Robinson, shot right before the season. He's back. Remarkable. And you've been doing that without Chase Young on defense. So, and now you get your best pass rusher back. They're an interesting wild card team going on the road.
And it's a team built to win on the road because of that defense and the way they should be able to shut some people down. I'm with you. It's an impressive story. Not just there was some sort of self-created controversies with Ron Rivera this offseason also and his defensive coordinator. It's been a wild year for them, but it's been an impressive one.
Chad, do you wash your Christmas tree? It's a legitimate question that someone,
I guess now we need to ask.
Yeah, someone actually has done this, and we'll explain the details of it in a story from OutKick.com. That's next on OutKick 360.
Guess who's back, back, back. Drew is back, back, back. Guess who's back, guess who's back, guess who's back, guess who's back. Drew Brees is back at Purdue. I'll give Drew Brees great credit. The All-Pro Hall of Fame quarterback has always been around Purdue. He has never, ever, ever separated himself for Purdue. You see those guys that are on TV. We're going to introduce the offense now. Dan Duckage, St. Peter and Paul grade school. Shut up! That ain't the point. Drew Brees has given a ton of money to Purdue. Drew Brees has been on the sidelines for Purdue games when he's had a chance. You see on Instagram or on Twitter when Drew was on it. You know what you saw? You saw Drew Brees' kids dressed in Brees Purdue uniforms. Good for Drew Brees coming back to Purdue. And good for Purdue, let's be honest. Hey, the number one thing you can do as a coach right now that's starting a job is make a great first impression. And I got to tell you, between giving the Maccabee kid a scholarship yesterday and Drew Brees back with the program, I got to tell you, that's a hell of a first impression. Graham Harrell is coming to Purdue from West Virginia. Now, I don't know if Graham Harrell is great. At SC, they were in the top 20. They averaged like 30 a game in the Big 12 at West Virginia. But, hey, let's go. When you're Purdue, I don't know. That's a good start for a new coach. That's a great start for a new coach. So good for Drew Brees. But here's the deal, and this is what you got to understand. The best wide receiver at Purdue is a guy named Charlie Jones. Charlie Jones opted out to go to the draft. You know who the quarterback is? Aiden O'Connell. Now, some people refer to him as AOC. I refuse. I will not refer to him as AOC. Are you kidding me? Hey, can we post, if you get a chance, and this is asking a lot, but if we could get that Maccabee scholarship thing from yesterday queued up at some point today and have the Biden deal ready, because I want to see, can anybody understand what Joe Biden is saying? And I like the fact when kids get scholarships, I think it's a great thing. But we're sitting here, listen to this, people. So Drew Brees is back. Purdue lost Jeff Brom. Jeff Brom was a quarterback coach. He was a guy that innovative offense. He had some big wins. He finally got Purdue to the Big Ten title game. Look, all right, he left. He went home. Purdue, the athletic director, and a very good athletic director, Mike Babinski, was ready. Hey, look, he didn't look very far. He went over to Illinois, and he got a coach. And you know what happened? That coach made a hell of a first impression. Let's play the coach at his team meeting giving Devin Mockabee, the star running back, a scholarship.
You know, first, where's Devin at? Yeah, Devin. What's up,
Devin,
man? Stand up, bro. So obviously, like, I played against y'all, right? When I found out he was a walk-on, I'm like, what the hell going on over there? So first order of business, I'm gonna pull rank right now, and you on scholarship, all right, dog? So that, I guess that's what it feels like to flex a little bit as a head coach, you know what I'm saying? So congratulations, man. Couldn't be more happy.
Coming up, we've got the injury reports for you across the NFL. We will also take a glance at the college football bowl schedule, which is underway starting today. UAB, they knocked off Miami of Ohio in the Bahamas Bowl. You have an update on the other game that's going on right now,
I'm
Joe?
looking it up right now, and I'll let you know. It's Texas San Antonio playing Troy in game number 2 right now. This is the Duluth Trading Cure Bowl. Texas San Antonio up 12-7 at halftime. This game was 2-0 at the end of the first quarter. Texas San Antonio.
This should be a high-scoring game, and it's not.
No. Offenses
UTSA
really took
was
the
boat racing teams this year.
Offenses of
In
both these teams
conference.
took that time off, literally, getting ready for the bowl. Just said, we're not going to prepare. This is the Duluth Trading Cure Bowl.
We're leaving.
Yeah, they said if you're going to send us to the Duluth Trading Cure Bowl, we're going to give you a Duluth Trading Cure Bowl level effort in preparation for the opponent. And that's what we got.
Chad, are you a artificial or real tree person?
I'm an artificial tree guy only because I have some of the most insane allergies of any human on the planet. And if I put a live tree in the middle of my house, I might die. My eye all week has been just out of nowhere swelling up overnight. My left eye gets really red.
I see it worse. It's worse now than it was early in the week.
Yeah, it got worse overnight, but there's something. I'm convinced I'm probably allergic to something either in this room, because it gets worse when I'm in here,
clearly,
or when I get home, there's something going on. I may be allergic to my fake tree, for all I know.
Well,
there's a lot of fake garland all over my house, and I think that combined with the tree may be what's messing up my left eye. So putting a real tree in my house is a no-go. Now, if I had no allergies, I would be a real tree guy all the way. All the way.
I love the smell of the real tree in the home. Like, to me, it's second to none around Christmas time. But there is to your point about allergies, there's a woman, I believe, over the UK who admitted she was posting photos of her artificial tree soaking in a bathtub, where she washes her tree prior to putting it up each year. And I mean, you see the.
I feel like Davey's got more info on this lady.
Well, you see this,
what she's doing.
You see it soaking, Davey, and like it does appear that dirt is removed from this. She says she went from a pet home to now a pet-free home, which sparked all this. But besides just that, she doesn't want the dust and dander and allergens on this. This is odd, because the water looks filthy. I also think it's the dye coming off the fake tree that is making the water look so filthy to begin with. I think it's playing a trick on her mind. What do you think?
I really am kind of at a loss for words, because like I'd never seen anything about this. Like never even heard of anyone doing this. The first question, like this was apparently pulled from a Facebook post, but I was like, surely she's not doing this with like a real tree that you're just going to get rid of not long after. But thankfully, at least it was an artificial tree. But I get it. I mean, Chad, you talk about having the dust, the allergies, stuff of that nature. You want to get rid of it, but still, it's just such a weird concept. I mean, what do you do to dry it? You just like,
I don't know.
Like I saw this and I was like, it made me think, is anybody else doing this? Because usually it's like one of those things like you're just not willing to ask the question because you're like, well, they're going to think I'm an idiot if I bring this up. So I was like, I'm throwing it out to the audience. Wanted to get your guys' take.
Nice tree soak.
Well, permission permission to sound heartless.
Go ahead.
For a second.
Yeah, look at that camera and be heartless.
To sound a little bit insensitive. When it's time to clean your fake tree, it's time to throw away your fake tree and go get a new fake tree. And if you are someone who can't afford a cheap new fake tree because it's time to clean your tree and you want to clean it, then you just shouldn't have a Christmas tree. I mean, there are things you got to budget for in life, and if that's the case, a new fake tree is too expensive, then don't get a tree, or sign up for some charity that hands out real Christmas trees. And if you got bad allergies like me and you can't have a real Christmas tree, then you're not going to have a Christmas tree. But if you really think that putting your tree in a tub and soaking it is the way to go at any point, if your tree is that damn dirty, then you toss that thing in your trash. You take it to a nearby landfill. You do whatever you need to get rid of and dispose of that tree in the proper way and go buy another tree. This is not a step. We're adding a step. The step is tree is old, dirty, whatever, dusty. I'm going to throw it away and get a new one. We've added this step of now we're going to soak the tree and wash it. No, not going to go there.
This is a germaphobe.
Yeah.
To the extreme.
And look, I'm sorry if you can't afford a new
Howie
fake
Mandel,
tree.
who doesn't shake hands?
Yeah. Well, I get what the woman's saying about I had pets, and maybe she's got someone in her house now that's allergic to pets, so they got to completely de-pet dander the whole place and do that. But just toss it.
I will say,
burn that fake tree and then go get a new one.
If I'm putting up an artificial tree, I'm in the future buying the one that's kind of split in half. Have you seen these? Because the back of your tree that you decorate it's never seen anyway. So the tree just butts up against the wall flush, and you have half the tree decorated, and you still have room to put gifts underneath.
Oh, that's great.
That's what I mean.
Every year taking the tree down leads to one of the biggest fights between me and Angie of the year because it is so hard and cumbersome to get that thing from the upstairs storage area downstairs.
And then back
up. And it
up.
hits the wall and scratches. And I mean, it's like the worst thing you could possibly do in our house if you get one little scratch on something. And I'm thinking, there's no way for me to avoid hitting the wall. And it leads, you're going too fast. You're too rough with the tree. And I'm just like, someone else take the tree and show me how you can go down these stairs.
You soak the tree
without
then.
hitting anything.
That's right.
It's your turn to clean the tree now.
Coming up, we hit the headlines. It includes the latest NFL injury report as we head into Week 15. And the Rays have signed a pitcher who is legally blind. For real. What's next?
Yeah, I think because things, transitioned from that regime side to that fundamentalist side. So we also had to change some of our tactics and our procedures and everything else and how we did things to cope with these guys because they were coming up with some ingenious ways of doing things along the line as well with some of the IEDs, some of the, the booby trapping the houses, things like that, using the cell phones to call to detonate everything. So it became, I think, as much as you say, more violent in that way, because with the regime guys too, we knew that there was the end state was trying to get Saddam, so that we needed intel as well. We needed to gather that intelligence. There was only so much that was there from previous, just historical data. Then we had to actually make it real intel and workable intel. But with the fundamentalists, if you gave them a chance to vote, and we'd say vote based off, okay, does this guy want to is he going to go along with the capture or is he wanting to fight? And then let's see who wins. They would rather fight than do anything. There was, so many times guys would detonate suicide vests because it's like, well, they're not going to take me, clack themselves off, thinking they're killing, other folks around them. But, they just, I don't know, they just were different folks. And it was like we had to get more violent in a way, because again, we were going after intel and doing things and our procedures and everything on the battlefield just had to kind of adjust just like they were doing.
That's crazy. I truly cannot imagine. And I was in college. I started college in 2010. So I was in high school when things were getting kind of real bad in the 06, 07 era. And I remember people would always talk about do we really need to be fighting these guys? Are they really that bad? And I'm like, this Zarqawi guy's literally chopping people's heads off, right? And don't think it stops there. Like, if this guy could, he'd chop all of our heads off too. Fortunately, they dropped a couple bombs on him, I believe, if I recall correctly. So now I want to get into some comparing and contrasting. What were the big differences between fighting in Iraq versus fighting in Afghanistan? Was it mostly the terrain? Was it the level of the combatant? Like, what were the big takeaways that were different from each other?
I think early on with Afghanistan was, everything was so spread out. Everything was so far in between, and we didn't have many helo assets early in the war, just because of how, basically really having to share them along with the other task force and things like that. And so there was a lot more driving, or you would get flown to an area and then you'd be there for a bit, and then, oh, you're not getting there, you're not getting back to your home base for a while. So you're trying to make do of it and literally just sometimes sitting around doing nothing. But then within Iraq, you had more cities, bigger cities, everything else that we were hitting. Granted, you had Kandahar, you had Kabul, but everything really wasn't happening in those locations. It was farther out because, where the terrorists had their training camps from, years before us ever getting there. But then within Iraq, they could hide right there in the cities. There were, so much just open roads, everything around and everything else, at a lot more built up areas. And it was an easier road system to get around. So it made it easier for them as well to move around. The terrain, definitely changed throughout, Iraq. You had your river valleys in a way, and you had the humidity, you had palm groves, everything else. And then you had your rocky mountain areas, dry areas. But then Afghanistan was just so severe with the mountains. I mean, that's some treacherous terrain in itself.
Glad you're with us. The final hour, Friday edition for OutKick 360. If you're listening, we appreciate that to this great radio station. And if you're viewing us on YouTube or streaming live at OutKick.com, we hope you'll like, subscribe, and share that feed as well. Coming up, we will take a look at some of the college football games kicking off the bowl season underway now. But tomorrow, a nice handful of games with some interest, some intrigue. And then we're about a week away from really getting to the heart of the SEC bowl season, which should be fun based on South Carolina's opportunity against Notre Dame. And what are we going to see from some of the other SEC programs with players opting out after seasons that have not lived up to expectation? Kentucky's one of them, of course, but also the sad news with Mike Leach, Mississippi State, and what can happen there in
Tampa.
Tampa.
Helmets they're wearing, by the way, are some of the slickest I've ever seen. Incredible look for Mississippi State. Speaking of Kentucky, by the way, Keontae Goodwin, their highest-rated prospect of recruit ever, 5-star offensive lineman, is in the transfer portal after 1 year, after his freshman year at Kentucky. And this kind of, every time I see this, it reminds me of Mark Stoops complaining about their lack of money and organization with a collective. And this could be one that comes back to bite them if, in fact, he stays in that portal and goes somewhere else. Always a chance they come back. Just because you enter the portal doesn't mean you've left. You could always enter the portal and come back, and I'm sure Kentucky hoping that's the case with Keontae Goodwin.
NFL injury reports, and we'll start with the quarterbacks.
Hutton, real quick, on bowl games, you mentioned opt-outs and what are teams going to look like in these games. Tomorrow's Oregon State and Florida. I think that has a chance to be a blowout for the Beavers.
They're favored by 10
against Florida. Yeah, I don't know where Florida is right now in terms of the current roster under Billy Napier. He's doing a heck of a job recruiting right now, adding some big-time recruits. So he's going to get good recruits. Everyone who coaches at Florida gets good recruits and build it with guys that he wants in the program. But I don't get the sense that there's a lot of love and belief between the two sides. Coaching staff and roster right now, and they still have to go play in this bowl game.
Yeah, he's thinning it out more than he is trying to build it up, it sounds like.
I don't think it's a team highly motivated to play in this game is my point.
Yeah. Quarterbacks who are out. Lamar Jackson, he's out. Tyler Huntley's cleared concussion protocol. He will start for the Baltimore Ravens as they take on the Cleveland Browns. Mike White has practiced this week. He wants to play. Robert Saleh said he was going to play through the rib injury that he suffered last week and played through not once but twice before going to the hospital. Team doctors, though, in New York have not cleared him. They will not clear him for the game. That means that Zach Wilson is back to starting after being benched around, I believe it was week 11. He's back as the starter for the New York Jets as they take on the Detroit Lions. Russell Wilson, concussion. He's cleared concussion protocol. Chad mentioned earlier in the show, if you're just joining us, the Broncos, though, are holding him out another week, very similar to the way Tua Tagovailoa was treated when he was knocked out cold. And that was 10 days later. This is 7 days later for Wilson. Chase Claypool out with an injury. I haven't heard of Chase Claypool since the trade to Chicago. And saw him on the injury report today. He's been officially ruled out for the Bears. This was supposed to be one of those moves. It is for the future, but in the moment, it was going to give one of those weapons for Justin Fields, and you haven't seen him catch on. Kenny Pickett, doubtful to start for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and for the Titans, a litany of guys on the injury report, and a handful of them are not going to make the trip at all. Traylon Burks included. He's out along with Danico Autry. He is out yet again. Dontrell Hilliard, Christian Fulton, and Amani Hooker all out for this game against the Chargers on Sunday. Chad, this is big because the three-game slide here with an opportunity to wrap up the AFC South a couple of weeks ago if you just continue to win. 2's now the magic number. They need the Colts to lose, the Jags, but they also can add to their favor with just another win, 1. Point being, the sooner the better for this roster, because the guys who are out. They're going to come back when they can come back. But it doesn't, you don't have to rush it for a Week 18 win and in scenario type game that, based on how they're playing, could happen. And you don't want to have, you know what, we need to, instead of giving the extra week, Amani Hooker, we need you back in. Or Autry, we need you back in for a win in this scenario. And you also give the opportunity for a guy like Jeffrey Simmons, who's playing hurt. It's affecting his overall play. He's not impactful over the last couple of weeks, especially not playing next to Denico Autry. But aside from that, the ankle's holding him back. That's another guy you could rest, because this is very similar to last year. You're trying to get as healthy as possible as you host a playoff game on Wild Card Weekend. And unless they wrap this up, the sooner the better, it's going to be very difficult to pull that off.
Yeah, they're not going to have that luxury with that home loss to Jacksonville. They were going to have that luxury winning that game, but now that they lost, this is going to be a weekly thing. Now, Jacksonville and Indy could easily both lose this weekend. They're both underdogs.
Yeah.
And then lose the next. And I think if they lose again, it's pretty much wrapped up. If both teams lose 2 more times, regardless of what the Titans do.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
So, I mean,
the Titans still need to win a game.
Yeah. Point being, I think you could have a week. I think it's leaning towards you may have that January 8th weekend in Jacksonville where you're the 4 seed, you won the division, it doesn't matter, that you could rest everyone and have 2 weeks to get ready. Anyone who can come back to get as healthy as possible to host a playoff game. Don't know that it's going to matter, but that would help to have that opportunity.
For the Texans, they're really banged up with their best players. Damian Pierce, rookie running back, out this week, along with Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, and cornerback Derek Stingley will miss again for Houston. I mentioned all that just for fantasy football purposes.
Yep.
Those are your guys if you're playing them.
Gotta watch it
on social at OutKick360. The Tampa Bay Rays have signed a pitcher who is legally blind, and this has happened to him whenever he was 9 years old. His last name is Belge or Belge. Jeff Belge or Belge. Chad, you tell me. Belge. What do you think it is?
Sure.
Belge.
I'm going to go with Belge.
9 years old. He and his cousin, they were skipping rocks, and he accidentally skipped one where it came up and hit Jeff Belge in the eye. Lost his eye. It deflated his eye. His cornea gone. And the way it was described was his eye looked like a deflated balloon. I can't imagine what that's like. But then fast forward 7 years after that, and he's, of course, playing baseball, and a teammate accidentally hit him in the eye with a poke, and it deflated again.
I mean, imagine how bad you feel if you're the teammate that did that when I was reading the story.
Yeah. So,
was he at Syracuse or St. John's in college?
The story says he was at Syracuse, a Syracuse native. Oh, well, maybe it was St. John's. Yeah. St. John's, yes. But he's 6'5", southpaw. He throws in the mid-90s. Drafted, I believe, by the Dodgers a couple of years ago. And here he is getting another opportunity. Now, this is, of course, a chance to be called up from the minors eventually. But this is an intriguing story because if you told me a pitcher on the mound is legally blind and he's throwing the mid-90s, I don't know what I'm feeling in the batter's box.
Yeah, and it's that's a great point. So it's a trade with the Dodgers, and he's going to start in Double-A ball this year with a chance to work his way up. I mean, it's a great story of perseverance.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody I would think of Jim Abbott, who pitched a no-hitter. That's the first name that comes to mind. But, yeah, it's a crazy story. His vision is 2,300 to 2,400. Of course, 20/20 being perfect vision. 2,300 to 2,400. People can even have better vision than that, actually.
And I was at one point 225 before LASIK.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if you took my contacts out and what that was like, and knowing that that's double what he's feeling on the mound with one eye.
And it's one eye's fine. Like he could see, fine. He says it's all, there's not color, and it's kind of just shapes that he'll make out with the other eye. That he's pretty much totally blind in one eye. It's a story to follow if this guy can make it to the majors at some point. He's got the fastball for it, that's for sure. But, I mean, a good story of perseverance with him that he's made it this far and he continues to pitch. I keep thinking about just how awful you'd feel if you were the teammate that just messing around accidentally did that, and that was the result of it. Terrible.
Chad, I'm sure in your Bible class that with Evie and Lucy, you've taught the Jonah and the well story, right?
Oh, yeah. It's Evie's favorite Bible story.
You know, this
I don't know that she'll like this story as much, but
a 2-year-old was safely rescued after being partially swallowed by a hippopotamus in Uganda. I don't know how this is possible, but this reminds me of Jonah and the well. Like, this is Dockets was saying this morning, like the hippo is the craziest, strongest, meanest animal you could come across. Unpredictable, and he's living in an area, this family, everyone there, living in an area with hyenas, hippos, elephants, lions, and yeah, this toddler swallowed by a hippo and somehow has survived this. Based on just the jaws itself, this doesn't sound real to me, Chad.
Yeah, and the story's at OutKick right now, and reading the story at OutKick, I learned that hippos kill 500 people a year. They're one of the most dangerous animals on the planet. Did not know that. Also incredible that everyone in this, wherever in Uganda, where this happened, they just started chucking the hippo with rocks to spit the child back up, and it did. Like that it worked.
It was also head first.
Well,
which is
yeah. Like I see how that's a natural response. Like, hey, that's our kid, you know, and the animal grabs it. Like you do something to it, but the fact that they knew, they just started pelting the hippo with rocks, and it vomited the kid back up.
Yes.
And at last check, the kid was in the hospital, but he's going to live, right?
Yes.
Alive.
Yes,
I mean, what an amazing story. Now, in Jonah, I believe Jonah was in the whale's belly for 3 days. I think it's sort of symbolic of Jesus that way.
Yeah.
Not 3 days. I don't think it was 3 hours even. I don't think it was 3 minutes. It seems like, reading the story, there's not an exact timeline, but it was pretty quick. It was swallow, pelted with rocks, spit it back up.
And this is the first case where it's not like the kid got around the lake.
Yeah.
This is a hippo that wandered into this area and attacked him. And yeah, according to the report, this child, his last name's Paul, treated for injuries on one hand. He received a rabies vaccine, and he was released. The most painful part of the hospital trip is the needle.
I first and foremost, we are thrilled that the child is fine. Second, what an amazing story to tell at a party when you get older.
You know what? I was swallowed by a hippopotamus.
Hey, everybody, let's get Jonathan over here. Tell us about the time that hippo swallowed you.
Well, it was head
I don't
first.
remember it. I was only 2, but my parents said it was a real tough few hours there. And then all of their buddies picked up rocks and pelted the hippo with the rocks, and the hippo threw me back up, and everybody has a great laugh, and you just go about your evening. What a cocktail party story for this young man as he grows up.
Can you imagine living in that area with lions and hyenas and elephants, and then the hippopotamus is actually the most dangerous animal?
No, in fact, I'm going to use this story on my young children now to tell them just how good they have it at this point. I'm gonna every time say, you things could be worse. That you're getting to go to this dance party right now. You could live in an area where there's a very real threat that you get swallowed by a hippo at any point in time. In fact, here's an actual story of that happening. Yeah. I live to give my daughters nightmares. That's what I'm really trying to do here.
And to throw rocks in order to scare it. And then they were somehow able to scare it back into the lake, which is also, I mean, that's a coin flip too. If you're actually going to get it to go where you want, or it's going to attack you.
There's always this debate about what to do when encountering a bear. Some people say that you got to get bigger and like yell at it, and then it'll go away. Others say be just completely still and not move. Davey's going to tell us what you should do. He's our bear expert.
I mean, it depends on the bear.
Yes.
So brown bear,
yeah,
lay down. Black bear, stand tall, try to scare it away.
Grizzly doesn't matter.
Polar bear, you're dead. I mean, that's pretty much it.
They're going to get you either way.
Have you seen
But I say that because do you think people in Uganda know exactly what to do with a hippo when they encounter them? And they know exactly how to get that thing back in the water?
Yeah, but they were just trying to get the body back.
I mean, is there like a sound you make? Like, you yell really loud I mean, I don't know. Is there like a call for it?
I'm
that
sure
you can make
screaming.
a certain sound?
I'm
And
sure
then
they were screaming.
if it's a certain high frequency that the hippo hates it and will just go back in the water, if you scream really high, I don't know. So now I want to research what to do when encountering a hippo.
Have you seen the polar bear video of the, I don't know what this guy was doing, but he's a photographer for something. He was doing this for some type of documentation or documentary one. And he's in this like glass contrapted box, but there's a way to actually stick your hand out if you want to, right, with bars. This polar bear is doing everything in its power to rip in and get after this guy. And he's sitting there just taking, still images of this. And I'm thinking, man, what are you doing?
How do you keep...
At one point, it looks like it's going to break it. It looks like an unbreakable
man, this
cage.
is great. I'm getting some great shots here. This is awesome.
It looks like an unbreakable cage. YouTube this. But at one point, it looks like one of those scenarios where you're in the shark tank, and you're in the cage, and somehow the shark finds a way in randomly. It felt like that. Like you were going to watch this dude's death. Like I was at YouTube and thought I accidentally went to facesofdeath.com watching this.
Oh, I didn't know that they were showing snuff films now on YouTube. Interesting. I didn't know that was a thing. No, that's nuts. But I could not.
You have a death wish if you're doing that.
If I'm at no time would I trust the engineering of the cage or contraption I'm in over that of God's creation of the polar bear getting to me.
And you don't realize
how big
these bears are.
If that thing wants to get to me.
Like there is a perception of the polar bear being like this very, not small, but an average size bear that's kind of cuddly, right?
Yeah,
We've seen that with Coke. But when you see this like massive animal.
Those people at Coca-Cola are just ruining the perception of polar bears everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the globe in the classroom, like the actual scale model is way wrong from the globe we use with all the countries. The Christian countries made their countries appear larger or on scale with the non-Christian countries so that they were on. So if you actually see a 2-scale model of a globe, it is way different than what you're seeing right now. Like Africa compared to the United States or just North America in general or just Europe compared to Africa. It's way different. Blew my mind when I saw it.
We're learning so much today.
But if you didn't have that, if you didn't have the
hippos?
zoomed in aspect of it, I don't think you would actually be able to figure out what's what. It would be so small compared to the large landmass.
I mean, this image of the polar bear that Tyler's pulled up, Tyler or Corey right now that I'm looking at,
definitely
is
Corey.
Just terrifying.
That's definitely a Corey photo.
I mean, the bear, for those just listening, is just covered in blood all over the bear's face as it has just ripped apart.
I thought it was going to be that man in the cage.
A walrus, it appears.
I don't know.
Wow.
I doubt we can show the footage, but man, it was crazy. Yeah.
I'm going to be watching the footage during the break.
You know what, Chad? You go take a screenshot of this YouTube video and you send it in.
That's right.
So we can show
it. I'll text it. We'll show that.
Yes. Coming up, bowl games have started, and Chad mentioned it. Florida and Oregon State, there's some intrigue there. Maybe it's not must-watch quarters 1 through 4, but I'd be paying attention to it from an SEC perspective just to see what the Gators are showing in a game where they just want to get it over with.
Yep.
They're just simply finishing it out. We'll run through the entire slate of bowl games tomorrow that pair up with the 3-game slate across the NFL. It's next on OutKick 360.
Welcome into the Trey Wallace podcast on this somber week as we remember head coach Mike Leach of Mississippi State. Also get into a couple other topics, but I'm Trey Wallace. Happy to be joined by my boy Jake Crane here from Crane and Company. Every single morning you can catch them. Jake, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Trey, man, appreciate you having me. I'm doing well. Obviously, some sad news on the forefront, not only in the college football world, but the sports world in general with the passing of Mike Leach. But it's been a while since me and you've been able to get together. And even though the circumstances are rather grim, I'm always glad to see you.
No, trust me, man. The feelings are mutual. And it's just looking back on yesterday and the last couple of days with Mike Leach and everything that went down, your first thoughts on Sunday when we all start getting news and we all start hearing about everything that's happened with Coach Leach, the first things that come to your mind when that goes down, Jake?
Well, once kind of the shock wears off a little bit to where you kind of get in a normal headspace again and are able to take kind of a 30,000 view look at it. The memories pop up obviously of the funny media moments and the big wins. I mean, you look at the pass to Crabtree in the game versus Texas is an iconic play, and really throughout his career, how integral he was in the air raid, going back all the way with Hal Mumme at Iowa Wesleyan, where they invented it basically and named it. It was kind of his baby, and he was part of that air raid. Spread you out, replace modified runs, replace the run game with the pass game, and pass to run. But the thing I think that I ended up getting the most from the sad news, outside of it not looking good and the shock value wearing off, as I mentioned, was that Coach Leach was something I think that we're losing more of in every day in our society. He was genuinely himself.
Yes,
he had his principles. He had his ideas, and whether you like them or not, he wasn't going to change them. And in a society like we're in today, where everybody goes with the woke mob or what's in or what's not going to get them, in trouble per se, or looked at as a terrible person, it was refreshing almost. So that's what I kept coming back to. That's what we talked about on the show, is just his genuine ability to be himself. And it's sad that that's an anomaly in society today, but it is.
Isn't it crazy to have a coach like Mike Leach who was not afraid to say what was on his mind? It doesn't matter if it was post game. It doesn't matter if it's a midweek conversation. It doesn't, I went back and watched something last night, Jake, and he was talking about student debt and how he would rather spend a month in jail than have to pay off his student debt, and how it hurts society and it hurts the kids and they can't get out of it and whatnot. But he was not the one to ever hold back on anything. And you couldn't, I don't think the ADs at Tech, at State, at Mississippi State, and I was referring to Washington State, I don't think they wanted to hold him back. He was his own type of man, and I think that's what made him special, brother.
Yeah, no, and he's an old school football coach at heart too. If you kind of see the way he goes about things, so it's such a unique blend. You could go across the globe, and I don't think find another person that's super similar to Mike Leach and his personality. But yeah, I mean, let me ask you this: if I drove across the country when Joe Moorhead was the head coach at Mississippi State and asked high school football recruits, "Tell me the head coach at Mississippi State," a lot of them are not going to know that it's Joe Moorhead, but those same kids that wouldn't know, if I would have driven through during his tenure, would have known that Mike Leach was at Mississippi State.
We're watching the polar bear video. If you haven't seen it, just search out. It's a plexiglass box. That's how I would YouTube it. Polar bear plexiglass box. And you'll see this BBC guy.
It's kind of a Bear Grylls type dude. Yeah. And he is way too excited about this polar bear being very close to him the entire time.
About to break the
There's
plexiglass.
not nearly enough fear in this man's eye
Right,
as this polar bear discovers the crack in his pod that he's in and starts to get his snout close to it. Harrowing few moments.
Chad, a harrowing game tomorrow in the Fenway Bowl. Intrigue because it's the battle of two programs with Cincinnati and Louisville with two interim head coaches, and both new head coaches, will be in Boston, will be at Fenway, and will definitely be a part of the broadcast in this game. That's the intrigue with this more than it is the actual play on the field.
So Scott Satterfield leaves Louisville to go to Cincinnati. Now Louisville and Cincinnati are playing. Cincinnati, of course, their head coach, Luke Fickell, is off to Wisconsin. And now Louisville's new head coach comes down for Purdue in Jeff Brom. And now these two teams go head-to-head. It's one of those, I mentioned it the moment all this started happening after the game was announced. I'm way more into the what's going on around the game than the actual game with the players that are sort of left behind for both these two teams. But that's a good one. Of bowl season, that to me is one of the top ones to watch, simply because the drama around the coaches that are coming to both those schools.
It's also the first ever Fenway Bowl. They were supposed to do this last year, but it was canceled. And you have a situation here where you've got the rough 100 miles probably separate Cincinnati and Louisville roughly, and they've met probably 50 to 60 times. But now you get it where, and by the way, you've got a handful of players also who have opted out to prepare for the NFL draft in here. Don't know what the game actually has in store for us, but the comments from the new head coaches will be worthy of viewing.
They've played a game. I'm trying to think of the game I saw. Did Notre Dame play a game at Fenway maybe once before? I know that I've seen a game at Fenway.
Colin says yes.
Northwestern played a game at Wrigley one time. I remember that being a thing. But I always like to see what it looks like, especially at historic places like that. You got the Pinstripe Bowl that's at Yankee Stadium. But it's cool to see when they convert those, especially old-timey parks like you have with Fenway, into a football field.
Florida at 6-6. This game will kick off at 2:30 Eastern on ESPN, so it follows Cincinnati-Louisville. By the way, Louisville-Cincy, they kick off early, 10 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock Eastern, followed by Florida and Oregon State.
You're going to see more of that, by the way. There's some other games that are 10 a.m. Central. The first game of the bowl season was 10:30 a.m. Central Time, 11:30 Eastern in the Bahamas. This morning was the kickoff of that game.
The Gators, they gave third-year sophomore Jack Miller his first collegiate start by naming him the guy for this game. And it's more or less just how would you say, is this a litmus test of some sort to see what – this is a Florida team, Chad, that last year quit down the backstretch of the season.
Yep.
And now they're limping in here where Billy Napier he's been running off players, trying to thin out the players that he doesn't want around based on, their leading tackler at linebacker, they sent him packing midway through the season. So this is just more about getting back to recruiting, trying to sell the overall, here's where we're headed more than where we are. But Trey said yesterday it's important for Florida to show well in this game against Oregon State. I don't know I think that means keep it respectable, right? Because I don't know if I see them covering the 10. I think Oregon State, you mentioned it, could just absolutely destroy them.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And it goes back to, it's not if you lose, it's how you lose, but also it's bowl season and who knows.
Yeah, I disagree with Trey on that. This point, look, it's not good to get blown out at any point. So it's not going to look good for your fans the way they finish the season, losing to Vanderbilt, losing to Florida State, and then possibly if they get, trucked by Oregon State, it's not going to be a good look. But I don't think it's overly important, only because if that happens, what you're saying is, Billy Napier is, it happened because these guys aren't with my culture. And I'm bringing in guys that'll be with the culture, and everything's going to be fine. And I think it's pretty easy in year one, if you're a Florida fan, to chalk this one up and say the guys Mullen brought in are Mullen guys. They didn't buy in. They didn't work hard enough, whatever. Whether that's true or not.
Right.
It's not a good first year for Billy Napier. I'm not making excuses for him, but it is year one. And if you're coming into a situation where the team quit late in last season, well, that's a culture problem that he inherited. And those guys came back. So they started out well. They beat Utah at home in week 1, and then it fell apart late. So if it continues to fall apart, I think it's pretty easy to come back and say, yeah, it fell apart because of the players and not Billy Napier as the coach. He's got a great recruiting class coming in. He's going to bring in transfers, and everything's going to get better once he gets his guys in. Again, whether that's true or not, I think that's an easy sales pitch to the fan base. And then we're going to hear that if they get beat by Oregon State bad.
And this is the Las Vegas
And I think
Bowl.
they will.
I think it's good. This is a good location for a bad team to get focused. You want to be there. This is not like you're going to Birmingham. No offense, Birmingham, but the Birmingham Bowl or any of these others you want to point to. Like we saw the pregame speech from Arkansas, I believe. Yeah, it was Arkansas. With the opportunity with another win, Arkansas felt like they could have their pick, and they were going to say, "Hey, you guys want it? Let's take care of business. We'll go to Las Vegas," and that got their attention. Of course, they didn't end up winning, and they're not there. But here's Florida at 6-6, over under at 53, I believe, and the spread is 10 points. As Oregon State can have just their third 10-win season in program history. And
they better hope that Miller stays healthy.
Yeah.
Because if he goes down, I'm not sure what's behind him for Florida because not a lot of scholarship options left at that point.
Washington State and Fresno State, they will play at SoFi in the LA Bowl. And, Fresno, they've had a fantastic season. Washington State has certainly pulled their fair share of upsets. And honestly, the Pac-12, as far as depth is concerned, they're the second deepest conference, team for team, program for program, based on what we've seen results-wise. Been very impressed with what we've seen from them.
It's been a good year because, especially, we've already kind of forgotten about UCLA, who had a great year. Oregon. I mean, we saw that conference championship game where Utah gets USC for a second time. But Oregon State had a chance to beat USC earlier in the year. So, no, I'm with you. Top to bottom, good league. Big 12 falls into that a little bit as well. They've got good teams at the top pretty consistently all the way through. If I had to point to one conference, well, two, but one that was truly disappointing, it's Big Ten.
Yes.
Because it's very, very top-heavy. The other one's the ACC. The ACC was bad this year. We've talked about that all season. But there is a void there for someone to step up and step into that number 2 spot behind Clemson and challenge them now, where they were almost unchallengeable before.
Yes.
There's an opportunity for a Florida State, for a Miami eventually, for North Carolina, for someone to step into that spot now in the ACC because that conference isn't very good.
Fresno State, they win the Mountain West. They're the champ. They're 9-4, and they've won 8 games in a row. They started the season 1-4, and they've won 8 straight to win the Mountain West, and they're playing here against Washington State in Los Angeles. They should have a pretty good showing for that game.
That's the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl, right?
I guess, yeah.
I think it's the Jimmy Kimmel Los Angeles Bowl.
Now have a chance at a 10-win season. After starting 1-4, the reverse
incredible turnaround. I remember late in the year looking at them at the top of the conference and thinking the whole time we kept thinking about Harsin.
Yes.
And this is going to be a nice way just to step back into your previous job, right? When you get fired at Auburn, and then they take off and win the conference.
Rice and Southern Miss will play tomorrow afternoon on ESPN. That is the Chad Lending Tree Bowl in Mobile, Alabama.
Another location that you probably don't get too psyched about.
Right.
For a bowl game.
Shreveport will be coming up as well.
That's another
SMU,
one.
BYU. BYU is interesting. 7-5. They're not favored. SMU at 7-5, favored over BYU in the New Mexico Bowl in Albuquerque.
There is a great story up at OutKick about SMU players being blown away by the amount of wives on the BYU team. Not that they have multiple wives, but Mormons tend to marry young. So a lot of the BYU players, or they went on a mission and came back, so
and they're all 25.
They've got wives and kids. They had 2 team planes come down. So they were getting off the plane. They go to these events. Someone was interviewing one of the players' wives saying it's funny to see the reaction of the SMU players blown away that at these team events, the whatever eating contest is going on and all that for the week of the game, they're
crying children.
Their minds are blown when all of the wives show up with the BYU players. I mean, they've got mortgages already. They've got families.
Yeah, families. In some cases, I'm sure 1 or 2 of them are grandfathers.
Yeah, they're all. That would be shocking when you're a college kid. Like, man, this. I think the number was like 27 BYU players are already married, and it caused them to have a second plane when they came down.
You could see the BYU team up close, Chad. We saw them a few years back out in Provo. They are physically different than just the non-Power 5, the Group of 5 team, right? Because most of those guys are 19 to 20 years old, and BYU players are 24, 25.
Well, they look like that 12-year-old kid that we saw out there playing the game, the one with a mustache and a mortgage.
Yes.
That's the sense I got. We were out there for a Middle Tennessee game against BYU and walking the sideline and seeing both sides. It's not that they're athletically superior. It's just you're right. There's a different. It's almost
especially on the lines.
It's like a different width to them. It's just they look more like grown men than even the grown men playing college football on the other side at times. When they go up against Group of 5 teams, I'd say that. When they go up against SEC teams, you're seeing similar bulk on both sides.
Boise State ties in to our discussion here too, because Boise State has not played in a bowl game since 2019, and they could have been playing in the LA Bowl, the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl, but Fresno beat them. So here's Boise. They are in Frisco. They're down in Texas at Jerry's World and at the practice facility for the Frisco Bowl. And this is I was interested based on their perception of not being in LA but being in Frisco, and they said we are grateful to be here. We are excited based on what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish. And you could say, well, that's kind of coach speak, that's program speak. This is just they're getting back to postseason play now for a team that on the routine we would expect to be playing towards the end of December, early January.
Yeah, when I hear Frisco Bowl too, that's another one that's not going to get me overly excited.
They're playing North Texas, by the way.
About what's happening. Huge day for college basketball tomorrow too.
Yeah, what's on tap there?
To mix in with these bowls, you've got Tennessee, Arizona, you've got Indiana, UCLA, Kentucky is playing. Davey, who's Kentucky playing tomorrow? They've got a big game also. Huh?
Well, I know Alabama plays Gonzaga, right?
Alabama, Gonzaga.
I'm looking it up right now.
Kentucky's got someone big. Indiana, UCLA.
And they have UCLA, Kentucky, UCLA tomorrow.
Kentucky, UCLA. Who does Indiana play? They have a big game too.
They got Kansas.
Kansas, that's it. Indiana,
Kentucky,
Kansas.
Kentucky, UCLA is
I was
tomorrow.
flip-flopping the two.
5:15.
And Kentucky will play Kansas later this year in the Big 12 SEC Challenge.
Yeah, this is a great
So that's a game
day.
that will happen also.
You've also got 3 NFL games on NFL Network tomorrow.
Did anybody mention Houston versus Virginia?
Did not.
That's a top 5 matchup.
That's a great one too.
Where are these games coming from?
When you get to be one of the programs that gets in that mix of being able to schedule all these types of games, that's big. I thought about this with Arkansas. Suddenly, Arkansas is a premier program that now is back in the mix for big-time non-conference matchups. Mm-hmm. Tennessee has jumped in there with Rick Barnes. They get a bunch of games, high-profile games, similar to this. So when you can join that group, that's always a good thing. And I'm putting Tennessee and Arkansas as two that have now elevated to join that top 10, top 15 group of programs that can have some marquee games every single year in the non-conference.
Chad, something I didn't think we would see in the Power 5 with name, image, likeness. This yesterday, 5-star safety Notre Dame commit Peyton Bowen. He rejected 2 NIL offers north of $2 million each from Oklahoma and Oregon, turn those down to honor the Notre Dame commitment that he had already made after a heart-to-heart phone call with head coach Marcus Freeman. That phone conversation led to him turning down $2 million plus as a five-star safety from two programs that are, one's going to be, of course, in the SEC moving forward during his collegiate time, and then Oregon, who's on their way back up as well. And the money is the money. Regardless of how you approach this, $2 million plus at that age, you're really setting up your family for a great start for a five-star athlete that's likely going to the league in 3 years. That's tough to turn down. And that tells me a lot about Marcus Freeman and the kid and the family. Because if he's pulling this off, there aren't many coaches that can do that. Five-star that's getting $2 million plus from two different programs, and he keeps his verbal and he keeps his commitment to the Irish.
Let me also say this. That's money very poorly spent. $2 million on a safety?
I know.
I mean, Tennessee got a quarterback that's a five-star for $2 million. That's the second-rated one in the country. I get quarterback, but you're going to pay $2 million for a safety? If all of that is true, and he had two separate $2 million offers.
That's the story I was sent.
I think that's poor roster financial allocation by those schools, quite frankly. And my second question is, and call me jaded, Hutton, how much is he getting to Notre Dame? It ain't nothing.
Well, I don't. Well, it's
right,
not, right, but
it's not like he turned away $2 million for zero. He probably turned away $2 million for $1 million to go to Notre Dame.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but
I don't.
It's rare that either this was just.
I'm weirded out that this is a story, and I like that it is. I'm like that he's been that transparent, and that we're talking about this now. But I still feel like maybe it's because for so many years with the NCAA around, I still feel a little dirty talking about this so openly and out front about it, that I want to be like, this is something that should be discussed in shadows with boosters and alums and not talked about how much you're getting offered to go somewhere.
This is also, the story for me here is the biggest challenge in this now NIL world is truly finding guys that love football, right? Like the true diehards. And that's the description of practically any NFL organization. They want guys who love ball. And that is going to be increasingly more difficult to figure out based on the fact that every single year, as the rules are slated right now, you can head into unrestricted free agency. Even if you want to come back, you're testing the water to see what the offer may end up being for you. This is one of those instances where, if true, it's one where you can figure out a kid loves ball or not based on this.
Yeah. And
even if a year from now he wants out.
You also, the market will reset because there's going to be bad money spent. We've seen that right now at A&M. I don't know how much those kids are giving back or if it was like a payment plan for each year, but there's a lot of that class that's getting paid.
But also money up front.
After 1 year. But you want to pay the kids that football's important to them if they're really good. Those are the ones who should make the money. But there's going to be payments made to kids who don't really love football. And then that's going to be figured out, and then it's going to – the market for what teams are paying and boosters are paying will start to slowly go down. I still think it's going to go up before it starts to go down. I don't think we've reached the peak of it yet, but at some point it's going to go down.
Do you think we learned anything from the Quinn Ewers experience at Ohio State?
I mean, I think you'd be silly not to learn from it if you're one of those schools involved. But I think quarterback is separate. That's why I'm shocked that a safety is getting offered $2 million. I think franchise-level college quarterback you could have start for 2 or 3 years is probably worth that investment at the highest levels. If they actually come in and are Heisman Trophy finalist level good, then that's worth the investment.
Coming up, the storyline we will be discussing on Monday is what? Our lead story based on results or our prediction of non-results for certain teams. We'll see where we go. We'll go around the room here with some different answers, get you ready for what's going to be a great sports weekend. This is OutKick 360.
Guess who's back, back, back. Drew is back, back, back. Guess who's back, guess who's back, guess who's back, guess who's back. Drew Brees is back at Purdue. I'll give Drew Brees great credit. The All-Pro Hall of Fame quarterback has always been around Purdue. He has never, ever, ever separated himself for Purdue. You know, you see those guys that are on TV. We're going to introduce the offense now. Dan Duckage, St. Peter and Paul Grade School. Shut up! That ain't the point. Drew Brees has given a ton of money to Purdue. Drew Brees has been on the sidelines for Purdue games when he's had a chance. You see on Instagram or on Twitter when Drew was on it. You know what you saw? You saw Drew Brees' kids dressed in Brees Purdue uniforms. Good for Drew Brees coming back to Purdue. And good for Purdue, let's be honest. Hey, the number one thing you can do as a coach right now that's starting a job is make a great first impression. And I got to tell you, between giving the Maccabee kid a scholarship yesterday and Drew Brees back with the program, I got to tell you, that's a hell of a first impression. Graham Harrell is coming to Purdue from West Virginia. Now, I don't know if Graham Harrell is great. At SC, they were in the top 20. They averaged like 30 a game in the Big 12 at West Virginia. But, hey, let's go. When you're Purdue, I don't know. That's a good start for a new coach. That's a great start for a new coach. So good for Drew Brees, but here's the deal, and this is what you got to understand. The best wide receiver at Purdue is a guy named Charlie Jones. Charlie Jones opted out to go to the draft. You know who the quarterback is? Aiden O'Connell. Now, some people refer to him as AOC. I refuse. I will not refer to him as AOC. Are you kidding me? Hey, can we post, if you get a chance, and this is asking a lot, but if we could get that Maccabee scholarship thing from yesterday queued up at some point today and have the Biden deal ready, because I want to see, can anybody understand what Joe Biden is saying? And I like the fact when kids get scholarships, I think it's a great thing. But we're sitting here, listen to this, people. So Drew Brees is back. Purdue lost Jeff Brom. Jeff Brom was a quarterback coach. He was a guy that innovative offense. He had some big wins. He finally got Purdue to the Big Ten title game. Look, all right, he left. He went home. Purdue, the athletic director, and a very good athletic director, Mike Babinski, was ready. Hey, look, he didn't look very far. He went over to Illinois. And he got a coach. And you know what happened? That coach made a hell of a first impression. Let's play the coach at his team meeting giving Devin Maccabee, the star running back, a scholarship.
You know, first, where's Devin at? Well, yeah, Devin. What's up, man? Stand up, bro. So obviously, like, I played against y'all, right? When I found out he was a walk-on, I'm like, what the hell going on over there? So first order of business, I'm gonna pull rank right now, and you on scholarship, all right, dog? Yeah! So that, I guess that's what it feels like to flex a little bit as a head coach, you know what I'm saying? So congratulations, man. Couldn't be more happy.
Wrapping up what's been a fun week, OutKick 360 from 6th and Peabody in Nashville with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad,
I get to go straight from here, by the way, to my daughter's Christmas program, Christmas music program. So that'll be fun.
What music will we be hearing other than Christmas carols?
Way in a Manger, Oh Holy Night, Silent. I don't know. I'm making all this up, but I'm assuming that's what's going to be on the menu tonight.
If you don't mind,
those types of carols.
Check out the
this is great.
The Leg Lamp Lager here at Yeehaw and Old Smoky. I'm trying to get a great look at this.
Yeah.
Help me out here. There we go.
I'm now Vanna White.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, here we go.
Switch over to Chad now. But yes, this is Leg Lamp Lager.
See that? Look at that.
Cherry Lager here.
This is a
6th and
beautiful.
Peabody.
This is beautiful. I think it's raspberry.
Oh, is it raspberry?
It's basically
that's
they're
even better.
easy with a hint of raspberry or cranberry. They're easy with a hint of cranberry. I'm making up fruits now. I don't know what's in there, but I love the can. I love looking at it.
It's good.
I'm going to save the can. It's a takeoff on A Christmas Story. It's beautiful. And they let me have some. Thank you.
Yes, you can get some here at Yeehaw and Old Smoky with 6th and Peabody. The headline we're discussing on Monday is what?
I'll be quick with mine. World Cup final Sunday morning stateside. Argentina, France. I think something's going to happen big in that match that we're talking about. I don't know what, but it's going to be something unexpected that we'll be talking about on Monday.
Davey?
I'll go with the football Americans actually care about, and we're going to be talking about the AFC East. All right, Tua's not going to be able to get it done in the cold. And then we're also going to be talking about how Jets fans just want to absolutely fire Zach Wilson into the sun.
Two things that I would predict will happen, by the way.
What happens
Dolphins
if
losing and then Zach Wilson not being good.
What happens if he puts on a show? Zach Wilson.
I mean, I said it before. He's just going to be the quarterback until he plays really bad. If he's okay and doesn't lose them the game, they're not going to go back to Mike White until he's really bad. Then they'll go back to Mike White. As good as Mike White has been and as much as we love that story, it's not as if he's now suddenly the guy. It's just whoever has the slight hot hand, they're going to stick with him.
Yeah, but he's at least, I mean, he's spinning the football at a much higher rate than what we were seeing from Wilson. Here's the headline I think we're talking about coming back on Monday. I think Baltimore wins. They can lock up the tiebreaker that they have. They're unbeaten in the division. They can lock up the tiebreaker they have head-to-head with Cincinnati. And I think the discussion will be Cincinnati, who is going to beat Tampa, is going to be the better team, but they're going to be a team on the road and not hosting a playoff game. It's very similar to their whole situation a year ago with 3 games to play. Now, speaking of Cincinnati and Tampa, if Tampa wins this game, their playoff odds go to 91% if the Panthers and the Falcons lose. But keep this in mind. If Tampa loses, and I think we're picking the Bengals to beat them in Tampa, their playoff odds at best will be 63% to get in. And, depending on if it's the Panthers or the Falcons, you can raise it or lower it by 9 to 10% for those teams too. But I think the storyline coming back on Monday is Cincinnati's the far better team than Baltimore, but Baltimore has done enough without Lamar Jackson to win the division. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay, by way and route of Cincinnati, they are looking over their shoulder at an awful division, unable to clinch and unable to put it away because Atlanta or New Orleans figures out a way to win this. I think Atlanta with Ritter is really intriguing because they've had all season to make sure when he's ready. If he was to get him ready for his first start, I think Ritter can really open up their passing game.
Here's what's wild about what you're talking about with the Tampa. Not a single person is afraid of Tom Brady in this playoffs with this Tampa team. That's not one team that's saying, hey, if they get in, watch out. They're another team that if they get in, everybody's expecting them to lose right away. They're not very good.
Win the weekend.
Yes.
We're back at it on Monday, 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Central for OutKick 360.